the 6th at 6:02 p.m. The goal is to have the town board receive information. In this case, we're going to be re-receiving and re-looking at some information on topics of town business. Maybe what we should do to kind of start is, we've got lots of different folks in the room, so that the board knows and recognizes who's here, is maybe go around the room. And we'll start there and then go around the room, and then the board can introduce ourselves to you as well.
Okay, I'm Elliot Solsky with Phillipsburg Consultant, consultant on the road plan.
And you can probably join us at the table since we've got extra seats now, so.
Makes me feel better.
I'm Tom Siegel, I'm with Water Valley.
Ryan Scallon, I'm with Discovery Homes of Windsor. I'm a small builder here that want to get bigger.
Rick Meehan of the Mill Creek Speed Home Builders Association, and I'm going through puberty again.
Kelly Hodling, town staff.
Emily Wenger, Windsor now. Karen Coons, Windsor Sevens Fire Rescue.
Jim Abbott, Windsor Severance Fire Rescue.
David Cheddar, developer.
Mike Blackwell, Windsor Sevens Fire Rescue.
Sandy Peterson, Windsor Sevens Fire Rescue.
And Herb Brady, same place he's got you.
Okay.
Ian McCarter, Town Attorney.
Ken Bennett, Town Board.
Ivan Adams, Town Board.
Miles Baker, Mayor Pro Tem.
Christy Melendez, Mayor.
Kelly Arnold, Town Manager.
Cindy Showerman, town board.
Scott Ballstead, Director of Planning.
Paul Redemeyer, Town Board.
Okay. And our first item this evening is road impact fee review, and Scott's going to lead that off for us. So Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. The town hired the team of Felsberg, Holton, Ullvig, and Duncan Associates to update the road impact fee, or the roadway improvement plan and road impact fee study this year. We hadn't updated the road impact fees since 2008 was the last ordinance, and through the economic downturn, we had deferred increasing any fee increases. So this year's update did result in a fairly substantial increase, and so that was adopted. The roadway improvement plan was adopted on September 11th, and then second reading of the road impact fee update was adopted on September 25th. And due to some comments that we received after the adoption, we are reopening it up tonight for comment. And I forwarded or included in the packet a few different comment letters that we received last week. And then I do have hard copy comments from 2 additional that came in today. So I'll pass those out while we just pass those around. So in total, I think we had about 6 or 7 letters with comments, mostly, I guess I would characterize them mostly as recommending a phased implementation, or at least a longer lead time for planning of fee increases. And so with that, those are the comments we've received. The email that went out went to about almost 100 different development community and building community members, so.
Scott, just for review, we had a January start date, correct?
Correct, we kicked it off in January, and after FHU and Duncan had done the background traffic counts and other analysis, we then had a June work session with Town Board, followed by a June stakeholder meeting with some of the development community, and then followed that up with a July work session with Town Board to discuss the changes that were made in response to the development community comments.
Okay, and just to refresh my mind one more time, when was it, the last update? I think you said it.
We worked through the process in 2007, and then the actual adoption was in January of 2008.
There was 2 other emails, right, Scott? One from Mr. McMeekin recently.
Right, I did have one more that came in from Pat McMeekin. It came in just at 5 o'clock about an hour ago, and I can just briefly, he said he wonders if there's a better approach to implementing these fee increases instead of waiting 4 or 5 years and doing a large increase, which is tough for builders to swallow all at once. It seems that annual increases based on economic conditions is the best way to approach this. And then he attached a policy from Greeley where they, every October, reevaluate all of their fees based on an economic model, and then they institute an increase every year, just to make it more incremental. So I didn't make copies of
Can we
that.
pass it around?
Yeah, sure.
But we didn't increase due to the economic climate at that time, right? We waited.
Correct. The code calls for a comprehensive update every 5 years. And it calls for an annual update based on Colorado Construction Index inflationary measures annually. So between 2008 and today, we went through the downturn, and so we deferred doing the comprehensive update. There were 2 years in '09 and '10 when the inflationary, or the CCCI actually was a decrease.
Right.
So we did implement the decrease in fees in '9 and '10, but then the only other change we've made was this past December, we adopted the CCCI increase of 2.3%, which we didn't try to go back and make up for the years that we didn't. That was strictly based on 2016 inflation.
So
May
just
I
to clarify.
suggest something?
Yes.
May we take a couple minutes out to read? I like to read these before we, because it's hard to hear and listen and talk. I mean, we just take a couple minutes to read them.
Okay. Does everybody want
I don't know, I may be the only one that feels that way, but I have a hard time reading and listening too.
to?
So.
Okay.
And we would have gotten these in the packet if they were late editions, so.
When was in the packet?
So
They
we
didn't
would.
make the pack.
We would have.
They said.
They weren't in the packet.
Well, okay, I was
because
just,
it
I
came-
was
Yeah,
gonna say, I didn't see.
no,
the
no,
packet, so
they weren't
I-
in the packet.
my position anyway.
And everybody kind of get the gist of, and I think it's similar to all of the other letters that we have received to date as well.
So quick question just to clarify. So you said in '08, we held off, or that was the last time it was adjusted. And then in 2009 and 10, the negative inflation index was applied.
Correct.
But then in 11, 12, since the positive inflationary indexes were not added
Correct.
until 2016, you said?
Correct.
So basically, the fees stayed, despite the rebound in the economy, the fees stayed flat from, okay.
Correct. Yeah, during those few years where no action was taken, the board was having several conversations about zeroing out the queue of reimbursements that were owed to developers at the time. So instead of changing the fees or anything, I think the conversation was more about getting down to zero and not having any outstanding debt from a road impact fee standpoint. Is that
Yeah, and then we made a couple of improvements, like the look back, we made that change. So we worked on it, the actual fee element. A couple times we implemented a charge for oil and gas in 13,
Yeah,
but overall, the overall impact fee did not get modified.
Do you have the slide or the information, I don't see it in here, that shows how we compare to all of the other,
to other communities?
yeah. I thought it was, it's not in there. Is it in the improvement tab?
It's in the slideshow.
It's just on the slideshow, okay. And while you're looking for that, in 2001, as we were anticipating that we would have to look at this every 5 years, there was probably a projection made at that time, similar to what we're doing today, where we're making projections into 2040. Do we know if those projections held out to be true? The projections that were made in
As far as
2001?
collections or numbers, or improvement numbers, all the above?
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to see how right on our projections have been, because right now, what we're saying with our study is, right, we're making projections to 2040, and based on that, we're seeing that there is gonna be a gap in, the funding, which is
Yeah.
why we're looking at raising this. So what I'm asking is, in 2001, when we established this and it said we're gonna have to look at this every 5 years, when we probably made projections at that time, or maybe we didn't do it till 2008, but if we made a projection in 2008 for what this was gonna look like, do we know, or do we have those numbers?
Do you remember that?
Ryan?
Can I speak only when spoken to?
Okay.
Okay, in my letter, I did refer to that 2002, or it was done in 2002, updated 2006, so in 2005. So I want to look back to see what they thought we're going to look like now, okay? And so on the low end, it projected that we would be at 27,500, okay? And I believe right now we're at 24,500. But on the high end, it was projected we'd be today at 2017, we'd be at 33,000. So we missed that by 9,000. So how many households is that? 4,000?
Are we at 24.5 now?
No, I think our estimate's more like 26.5.
24,500 is what I pulled off the website today.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
Okay.
includes 650 building permits, does not include 600 from last year, and the 600 this year, so it's.
And Ryan, I think figures that we get, I just knew you
I agree,
24.5.
and that's why I
would be
want
a
to look
little
back.
low.
And so at the high point, we're supposed to be at 33,000. So I'm just thinking that these road impact fees now are always, because it scares everybody, so it's always based on the high point. And so it doesn't seem like we're getting there, but it seems like we might, so that's why I agree with phasing it in and not all at once.
And Ryan, what year were those projections made?
This was adopted January 4, 27, so it was from 2005 to 2025. And so here is the line where we would be.
Now, Ryan,
But,
looking
but
at
what,
the,
yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that I think we're looking at the high point instead of the actual just low point or in between. Don't be scared of that.
Can you clarify anything with that, with regard to that, Elliot?
One thing we did do for, I think, the second study session was look at traffic volumes, how our projections compared with actual counts. Now,
Right.
years later, I don't have that with me, but there were ups and downs, and it was in aggregate pretty darn close, as I recall. And, precise locations of development is very hard to predict, but the overall, sort of aggregate was pretty good.
There's what you want, is that what you want?
Yes.
To our neighbors?
Yep. I just kind of wanted to see and put that into perspective, because I think, the issues that we've heard is, I think there is a preference from what we've heard to date for some kind of phase in, but there's also the question, and I think I've raised this previously, about how it affects what we call affordable housing. And do we need to think about that or look at that or any terms? We also have talked about, though, there's other things we can do in terms of for affordable housing. But I think we need to maybe look at this in comparison, because something that came to mind recently is, I know a person who looked at a home here in Windsor, bought the exact same house in Greeley for $60,000 less. And I don't know what part this plays into that, among other things, but I mean, it was the exact same footprint, just in a different
I think that says a lot for
Land
Windsor.
value.
city,
I
so,
mean, I think people value living here.
so.
Go ahead, Miles.
For, hey, just one builder, what is your timeline? Like, how does this impact, how far out are you pricing? If you sell a home today, when does it get built, or how's your pricing? Are you pricing for 2019 right now, or? Like, how does this impact? I mean, obviously it affects affordability, but how does it impact? Have you sold houses in 19 that, oh my God, or 18 that now
It's,
you'd
every
impact in
time,
this
you
field?
know, every time we build on the spec home, it changes and stuff like that. And so, I mean, the bigger builders can attest to, man, we need to do a price drop and now, and then they find that price drop, and then they break it even, and then they start making money again.
But a bigger developer, a builder, has probably already sold houses for 2018.
No, Tom can answer that.
Okay.
So then, in theory, how does this impact you if you haven't started pricing those homes yet?
Okay, we'll do this one-on-one, and I don't know, Ivan, if you have a follow-up
No,
question,
no,
we'll go
I'm
to
just gonna
Tom,
say-
and then David, and then Greg.
Comment about home builders, it depends, quite frankly, typical building site from a pre-sale, somebody walks in the office and says they want a house,
Yeah.
and then they do the design and permits, et cetera. That could be 10 to 12 months, so it's priced today, it's priced at the time they sell, and the delivery is 10 to 12 months later. However, many builders, especially large builders, D.R. Horton, Journey Homes, et cetera, they'll do a significant amount of pre-sales. So that could be, the house could be, that term could be 6 months from the time of contract, or even 3 months, because it's a spec house. So certainly it doesn't go into, it's not a year and a half. It's affecting us today.
So if you sold a home in July or August, you priced it one way, now we've instituted this fee for January 1, does that affect, you have to make that money up, or do you charge the buyer, do you adjust your price?
I can't, my costs, depends what the market will bear. So we made the comment that if the market, if I only can get $350,000 for this house, that's all I'm gonna get. Doesn't matter what the underlying fees are. The
Gotcha.
buyer doesn't care
Okay.
about the building permit, he doesn't care what the cost of water is, and he doesn't care about what the impact fee is. It's what he can afford at $350,000.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
David?
I'm glad you brought up the affordability issue, because it really is, I think, at the crux of what I wrote about every time you raise the price of a home by $1,000, okay, it takes out 158,000 families nationwide as to affordability to be able to buy. In other words, that $1,000 increase, 158,000 could afford it before the increase, now they can't. Okay, and I included with the letter I sent you a really nice, and Scott probably has it available in PDF form, breakdown across the country. They studied 357 market areas. One being Fort Collins, another one being Loveland, the other one being Greeley. You know, and within those, that $1,000 price increase took out almost 390 households from not being able to afford. And I think that my whole point was, I think there's a couple different ways to handle it, but I think when you look at, and I think this gets to your question to some degree, is when there's a $1,600 or $1,700 price increase, like we're proposing here, if that comes on the front end, there's additional costs that are associated with that from a building standpoint. And those costs, so basically for every dollar, it equates to be more like $1.20, $1.30 by the time it hits the home buyer. Okay, because all the carrying costs associated with it, you know, all the way through either development, it depends on when the fee is charged. So one of the suggestions that I threw out also wasn't that only you looked at possibly phasing it in so that it could be more tolerable for the builders, but I think you should consider when it's charged. In other words, if you charge it on the front end, we have all the carrying costs associated with that fee all the way through construction, and that pass-through is a greater number in the end to the buyer. But if you charge it, for example, on single-family homes at the time of CO, and if you think about when does the impact on a road really occur, it really occurs once the buyer is in the home, prior to, you know, somebody actually living in that home. So if you charged it at the point of CO, you're still collecting the fee, but it's more that fee being passed on to the buyer at that particular point is more in line to what the actual fee is without carrying costs associated with it. So I think there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat in this equation, but affordability does matter. And to that point, I spent 45 minutes this morning with a national builder who is not currently building in Windsor, looking at the second half of our Village East project. And that builder, you know, and I are wrestling through the final lot price, you know, because they want to be able to build in that 3 to 325, 330 range. And that's very, very difficult to do. You know, and so we'll work through that, hopefully. But I know it doesn't sound like a ton, but every single time you add X, it has an impact on affordability. So that was my whole purpose of coming up tonight.
Okay, Greg?
I'm gonna echo a lot of what David said. The study I looked at, very close to what Jeff, probably the same study, it was almost $1 per person excluded from the market in Larimer County. And I know Weld is pretty close to that same framework of figures. So in Larimer County, for every $1,000 increase, you knocked out 950 people from being able to qualify for a home. So it's about $1 for dollar. The second thing I'd add, and David started to allude to as well, it's not just what it does to the price of the home they're going to sell 6 months from now, but it also impacts whether the developer decides to even build here, because they've got to get together with the builder and say, can we develop this property? Can you build a home that will fit what we can get for a sale with these kinds of fees on top? And that's what's going to happen. We're starting to see builders go to Alt, and go to Piers, you know about Severance already, and that's what's going to happen. So it's whether or not you can phase it in and make it a little more palatable and still get that development to happen, or whether you want to see it go out of town and come back when that town starts to rise up.
Ken?
I got a lot of questions I'm listening to for answers, and I want you to know that my view is that we're in partnership with everybody. We want quality homes in our community, so I see it as a business partnership and relationship. Some comments about communication later on about that. But two things I do want to bring up right now. One is the affordability issue, and I'm big on that. I'm really concerned. I've talked to a lot of people who work in our community but can't afford to live here, so I'm really concerned about affordability. I'm having a hard time understanding, let's say the median price of a home in Windsor now was $347. I think it's probably $350, $360 now. Let's say it's $350. Okay, $1,700 increase, so now it's going to be $352. I'm having a hard time getting my head around how an increase in price from $350 to $352 is going to really have a major impact on affordability. So that's one of the questions in my mind.
Well, I'll try to break it down in the simplest
And I
way.
want about Windsor. Yeah,
Straight into Windsor,
Go
yeah.
to national.
No,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna tell you,
In this time, yeah.
yeah, let me try to explain it. So, when somebody goes to qualify for a loan,
Right.
okay, and I'm gonna try to keep it really, real simple in my mind. The lender that's qualifying, and the mortgage broker that's trying to qualify for, they're gonna look at basically two ratios. They're gonna look at what they call a front-end ratio, and they're gonna look at a back-end ratio for that buyer. Okay, and the back-end ratio is the cost of their mortgage plus all their debt can't exceed, let's say, 42%.
Right.
Okay, that 42%, so if somebody, and especially you see this a lot with first-time buyers, or when you get into the affordability, somebody, it's not gonna impact the guy buying the $700,000 house as much as it's gonna impact the lower end. So if you've got somebody sitting at a 42% ratio, so they're right on the line, and you raise the price $2,000, okay? Now his back-end ratio goes from 42% to 43%, and he's no longer qualified. Okay, now, would there be a workaround? Sure, you'd probably find, somebody that close, you'd probably find a way to work around. But the bottom line is that's why those numbers exist. And there are some people, quite frankly, that it doesn't matter what you do on the workaround.
Right.
They have 2 or 3 children, they have 2 car payments, so there's no workaround.
Right.
If they're borderline to start with on their back-end debt ratio, you're probably not gonna find a way to solve that. And that's where that affordable, that's why, I know it sounds crazy,
No,
that
I
somebody's
understand
at
all that.
$1,700 that would
I
make a
understand
difference,
that.
but it doesn't make a difference.
There might be other alternatives to housing affordability though, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
One of the issues
And-
is rent is more than mortgage, because people can't come on the down payment. So
Absolutely.
there's maybe some other strategies that, when we talk about affordability, that's the point I want to make.
Correct.
I wanted to ask something else though, too, because, and this deals with timing of implementation of fees. And I don't know the correct language, but I understand from a builder standpoint, if you've already got a house under contract, you haven't built it yet, but it's already been under contract, and the fee goes up, you could be eating the cost.
You would.
What's the, if we wanted to have some type of a waiver or timing for houses under contract, I don't know if that's the right language or not, what would our options be in that situation?
Well, that's why when the ordinance was adopted in September, we wrote into it that it wouldn't take effect until January 1st, so that hopefully those contracts would fall within that time frame. Obviously, that could be extended out further to capture more, but normally, I think the 3 months, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, or any of, but the contract time frame, that by the time they sign the contract, would through the end of the year normally cover most of those?
It would totally, Scott, I think it would be dependent, it depends on the type of house. I mean, if it was, for example, somebody like Journey, and we looked at Village East, yes, that would be very conducive. But if I was building a home, such as I did in Water Valley South, and it's a custom build, I could be under contract today, and I might not be
Okay.
closing for 12 months.
I would
So-
be-
But the fee comes in when the building permit is, so wouldn't the time you go under contract and finalize that price, the date you pull the building permit for it and pay the fee?
That
3
would-
months isn't,
No, because if I'm going to build a custom home, for example, I'm ready to break ground, I break ground, I've pulled the permit, okay, it's gonna probably, if it's a 3,500 square foot home, that home could take me anywhere from the time I pull the permit, 6 months to 9 months to build. At that point, they're moving into the home, and that's at the point of CO. And that's one of the reasons why I think that one of the things that would be very advantageous for you all to consider is frankly charging the fee at CO opposed to charging at the time of permit, because the impact on the road itself, when is somebody gonna actually be driving on it?
well, and I guess I understand what you're saying there, but my question is as it stands now under the current system, you're paying the road impact fee when
And
you
permit.
pull that building permit.
Yes, ma'am.
So, the time you go under contract to the time you pull the building permit and pay the fee, you're saying that could be greater than 3 months?
No, I'm saying from the time I go into contract,
Right, I understand the building time could be,
correct, but that's
Whatever,
when, that's
but-
when you're pulling the building permit is when you're gonna build the house, and you're not gonna close on that house until, until it's constructed. So nobody, you're gonna be carrying that fee on.
right, but I guess my point is, if the fee is implemented until January, any house you've got under contract now, you've got until 12/31 to pull that building permit and still get in under the old fee structure. Is that
I
correct,
think
or am I missing
typically
something?
the process when you're dealing with a homeowner doesn't, they have to pick their options and things like that, and you gotta prepare plans, et cetera. I can't pull the permit within, like if I sold the house today, I can't pull the permit tomorrow. I would tell you it's gonna be 3 months before I'm able to pull the permit.
At least.
Just because of design selections, actually going to qualify for a mortgage, having the architect sign the
But
plans.
from the time you sign that contract and finalize a price,
Mhm.
to the day you pull a building permit on that project, to me, 3 months seems like a reasonable time frame between those two pieces happening.
I think 3 to 4 months isn't a reasonable timeframe. But I think we also, I'm gonna change the subject a little bit, so, we're focused on one set of fees. We're talking about impact fees. We fight, when I say fight, we negotiate fees not just for building impact fees.
Right.
Think about water, think about, labor costs right now. You can't get a framing crew right now. So, when we talk about, we can't talk about this fee independent of all the other fees that we have going on out here. So I think we can't look at it just as this one fee. I mean, it's what's in the environment. When we talk about the impact fee going up $1,700, well, at the same time, our contract, our lumber's going up. We have all these fees, and what we're concerned, as I said before, if I have a 3-bedroom house and it's 2,500 square feet and the market's $350,000, that's what the market is. I can't raise my price because costs go. I can only raise my price when the market will better. And as we've talked about, it's about everybody's income. If everybody's income was going up 5 to 6% a year, maybe these costs wouldn't be that difficult because they'd be able to qualify for them. But actual wages going up this year is like 2%. So,
Okay. I think, Ken, did you have?
I'll wait.
Okay.
Yes, right.
So go ahead, another
So
question.
I had another comment, because most of the feedback we got was based off affordability. And I looked at this and I figured, I feel like very conservative, low-end numbers. But if we were talking a multifamily home, $175,000 condo, that $919 fee increase amounts to 0.5%, assuming that's just passed through. Now, if you start factoring in the cost of carrying that, maybe it's a little more, but that difference in mortgage, I figured a 30-year, 5% mortgage is $6 a month. For a single-family home, I did figures for 250,000 single-family home, which made the fee increase of $1,701 2/3 of 1%. If we bumped it up to a $350,000 home, it was less than 0.5% that increased, which amounted to $11 a month on a mortgage. And while I fully understand those qualifications, I mean, things as simple as the cost of insurance can determine if they're gonna qualify or not because of those ratios. The taxes, which you look at a home that's in a metro district versus a home that's not. I know I live in an area where there's not a metro district, and neighboring areas that have metro districts, their property taxes are double what mine are because of that metro district. That tax plays into their qualification for a home. So, I mean, while there's definitely a lot of facets that play into the affordability, you know, this is the one that's within our control. And I guess to me, $11 a month isn't an affordability issue in terms of if someone can live in Windsor or not live in Windsor. And while we talk about home builders being stakeholders, and I fully understand that you are on the front end because we're dealing with traffic, every person who drives in Windsor is a stakeholder on this matter. And I feel like if we'd put something out to citizens en masse about what do we need to do about traffic, do we need more lanes of traffic, do we need improved infrastructure, we'd need Budweiser Event Center to hold everyone who would come to say we need to do something about the roads. Because, you know, when you add a development of 300 people, there's 300 homes in that and we average 2 drivers per home, you put 600 more people on the road, that has a huge impact to Main Street. I mean, you look at 392 and Larimer County Road 5. If we put 600 more cars a day through that intersection, you know, it's gonna be backed up down to the river instead of to Tarmac. And I guess that's my concern in terms of, I feel like it would have been better to have adjusted this slowly over the years, but I don't know that ship sailed. And
Well, I did a little research, so talking about maybe phasing in the pricing, if I could share this with everybody, maybe that would, I think it speaks to your point about phasing it in, and maybe we could understand what the impacts would be if we did it on this different phasing.
Do you have a copy?
I have 20 copies.
Okay,
Just, I didn't know how many we were going to show.
okay.
So,
Why don't you pass that around, and then I think Ken had a question, and
Just a quick
then I.
editorial comment, based on what Cindy said, just fairness, so you all know what's on my mind, is, you know, one thing we hear is about traffic and impact. And you all know that, you know that. Traffic patterns and increased traffic. Even if we go 100% implementation right now, on the projected roadway needs, we still have a 32% gap, about a $40 million gap in the funds. So I mean, you gotta know that's part of our thinking here too, we have a huge challenge here to catch up. We're already behind on the traffic situation, so that's one of the challenges we're dealing with here.
Right.
Anybody can see this, right?
Because even
Oh, yeah.
the projected cost for all of our road improvements through 2040 was $136 million. Even with this current road impact fee in place, it will generate 91.8, if I'm following correctly, which still provides us with a gap. And then about 44.2 million, which adjusts to another 2 additional million if we do a phase-in of any kind. So, I mean, and I guess I'm looking to you, Elliot, to see if I have that in a nutshell, kind of that synopsis down right. in currently what we had been presented. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
so based upon this, let me explain it to everybody. I just took what was in the report, and just went through the historical pricing, the fees that were in existence in 2007, which was 2,164, which is and I just did this for single-family homes because I couldn't do it for the rest of them. So I just did this for single-family homes, so you see the 2164.
Right.
And based upon that report, I assume that the fees were constant from 2007 all the way through 2017, but I think we heard some ups and downs that Scott talked about, but essentially, it's 2,164 today. Is that accurate, Scott?
Yes, yeah,
So-
there were 2 decreases in '09 and '10,
So there's been no increases for 10 years.
except for this past December, there was a 2.3% increase.
Okay, so I mean, okay.
Just,
And the recommendation is to increase the fees by 77% in 1 year. 77%, $3,838.
Just for me, will you explain that because Martin said 77%. I only figured 52 to 56%. Where are you getting the 70? I mean, it's just, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. So it was 2,164,
All right.
and we're going to 3,838.
Slide.
If we do the math, that's an increase. The difference is
I brought it up from one of our actions on
$1,700.
September 11th.
Oh, there's, Scott's got a slide there, Ivan.
so this is a dated slide, it's a little bit different, but it does show at that time, it was a 79% increase. It got ratcheted down a little bit, but yeah, it's an accurate number.
So it's just based on that, those two figures, the 2164 to the
38, you're right.
38,
That's what that is.
Kennedy blow up.
and that's just for single-family homes.
And I only did it for single family because I'm not doing detached, I'm not doing all the other.
I looked at all the others too,
Yeah.
and I didn't see that big of it. I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page.
So that shows us, we would have a 77% increase in 1 year.
64 is the current fee.
If we go, drop down to the second line, which is a proposal that the increase would be increased over time, and I think the average rate's about 21%. So in 2017, again, it's 2,164, we go to 2618 in 18, 3,168 in 19, and $3,834 in 2020. My point, and I think that's one of the choices that we talked about. Just to look at this historically, if we had taken the 2,164 and increased it 5% a year, and I swear I didn't talk to Pat before I came here, we would be on target with a 5% increase that our fees today would be $3,701. Something much more manageable in the marketplace, so we can count on that.
And that 5% starting in 2007.
In 2007.
Yeah, if we had done
Right.
that.
What about the recession, though? What would have happened during that recession?
I understand.
Well, I know, but I mean, this town board had to deal with that. And I was with Martin
No.
at that time, so
And I know, and Mark was probably saying, leave them like they are, I get it, I'm just saying to you,
Well, I mean, I just understand, but I understand both sides of it, and I think that's something we have to discuss. And when we talk 5%, at that time, 5% was a lot of money.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you.
I just want to bring all
No,
these
I think
points
that's a great point.
into play, okay?
I think that's a great point.
All right.
Can you rewind? You said if we had done 5% in 2018, it would be 3701.
If we were doing 5% every year.
We would be up to,
37.
Starting in 2007.
got that.
Starting in 2007.
So why is that materially different than the 38?
It's not, I'm just saying to you,
That was
if,
at 5%.
it's a 5%
So we're
increase as
getting-
opposed to 77% in 1 year.
First, the sticker
You guys should be happy that we didn't do it the last 10 years.
No, I'm just-
But we're
well-
getting to the same point is what I'm saying. Or what you're saying as well.
But I'm saying to you a couple things. One, it would be something that you would have been competing with everybody else's, their price increases. Because we've had price increases overall. I'm not disagreeing with what you said.
Well, go ahead and finish.
And then, so the last thing I was gonna say to you is, so we're catching up for 10 years in 1 year, or
Yes.
2 years, okay?
Yeah.
My point is, if we did the same thing and increased it by 12% from 2017, starting in 2017 into 2018, and took that increase of 12% for 5 years, it'd be 3814.
So now you're comparing the 2018 and 2022, pretty close then, aren't you?
Right, but it's not 22%, it's not a 77% increase, it's a 12% increase per year.
But Tom, at the end of that 5 years, if you've only gone the 12% each of the 5 years, aren't we in the same boat when we have to do our next fee update? We're gonna be behind. We don't
We don't know that, that's why we do fee updates.
Right.
We don't know that.
So that's where,
And I would, assuming, and this, assuming that you would have, I would agree with you, but it would only be on those houses that were, for the 2 years that the increase was, you'd only lose that increase for those few houses. It's not for the life. Don't forget, this is going out to 2040.
Can I ask a question of our consultant? So this is based on a 23-year projection, and you based it on the increased updated fee of $38.38, which would have gotten us to the point of the $91.8 million. Did you project in that time an increasement of that fee every 5 years in that projection just to get to that 91.8?
No, what we did, we kept costs to 2017 costs and fees at 2017 fees, so presumably they both.
So it's, okay, gotcha. So we still, it's not gonna be that we're gonna see a larger gap, because technically, we're gonna see larger fees, but a larger increase, and that will cover for that, so to speak.
Right,
So, okay,
And
so,
if you choose to do annual
Okay.
increases based on construction costs, then presumably it would
okay.
stay pretty commensurate.
Well, we have to remember too, what we saw was that we were gonna have a shortfall. The implementation of the fees, according to the numbers that we were provided, which have been called into question, the numbers that we were provided. I come back to that too, because that's something that actually started all of this, was one of the developers questioning all of the traffic numbers on the roads that were going to equal that. But based upon the information that we were provided, we were still gonna have a
32%.
Well, $44.2 million would be. our gap.
shortfall, which was a percentage of 28% or something like that?
32%.
32%?
32% shortfall.
And I think some of that was based off of the idea that some of the roads that are going to need work are technically state highways. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that gap is kind of in there intentionally because of the impact of state highways in there.
Well, it comes out of the methodology based on kind of two factors. One is we don't include in the fee pass-through traffic that doesn't have a start or stop in Windsor, so it's not a Windsor trip. But you have to account for that growth too in road improvements. And the second thing is that there are credits provided on the fee based on non-Windsor spending on improvements. So there's the other town funds that are used, Weldon, Larimer County, and CDOT, or North Front Range, on the state highways. So there's some credits, and then there's some pass-through traffic. So between those two, the fees never pay for 100% of the road system.
And I guess my thought on it is, while maybe the projections aren't spot on, and maybe for some particular roads, those counts may be too high, but for other roads, it may be too low. But I think at the end of the day, we're looking at this fee structure covers 68% of the projected needs. And in theory, that other 32% is coming from other places like CDOT, but I think I-25 is a great example to show there's not gonna be CDOT funds coming to take care of a 392 expansion or a 257 expansion without us having to put a good chunk of money into the pot. And so I think at the end of the day, that more than balances out, and if anything, still leaves us with potential for shortfalls.
Okay, Ivan and then Ryan.
One of the things that I guess I want to say is that, first I want to ask, of the four of you, how many were you at the previous, what they call stakeholders meetings, where this was discussed? You were. And so we had heard that that wasn't even advertised and you didn't know about it, and so people didn't come. Well, this one was pretty well advertised, and we have four stakeholders. And I think it's been a good discussion. The affordable homes, I think, was a good discussion. But one of my concerns all along has been, all right, all the building that's going on in this town, in this area, where are we gonna move these people? How are we gonna move these people? And I've been griping about 4-lane roads, you know, through the town, so that we can move through the town. And that's, as the mayor mentioned, $136 million. Okay, we discussed that as a town board. We also discussed the possibility of phasing. We discussed 3 different phases, if that would be a possibility. But we were also looking for the total amount of money that we needed to build in the time frame that's gonna take care of Rain Dance, gonna take care of Windshire, gonna take care of, I mean, I can name all of them if you want me to, but the total number of homes and the total number of people, the total number of cars. When you look at the high school, 225 new cars in that parking lot from sophomores. Well, those 225 cars are gonna be on the roads. And I'm just using one example. And so I think that's something we were discussing. We're gonna need those roads, and how soon will we need them? Can we do it in phasing in? And that's something we discussed, but we didn't really move in that direction. We said, let's go all the way, let's get the money and make sure we can do this. And I'm not gonna try to say that was the right answer, but you know, I think if we'd had more information from you, like we had tonight so far, that was the reason we called this meeting, basically, to talk with you guys, talk with the developers, talk with the builders, and see, what do we need to consider that we hadn't considered? And that's kind of a soft pedaling approach, but that's me anyway. But I'm just, I'm thinking, and I want you to know, and I didn't know if you were aware of that amount of money that we were gonna need. And whether we could do it phasing, or whether we had to get enough to get started. And I guess that's why we hired the consultant to help us with it. And we got had these figures, and I've been at Water Valley, so I know what that building has done over the years. And I know what Rain Dance, go out there and look. And how are we gonna service that area without some roads? And, I mean, you're gonna be responsible for a lot of it, yes. But we're gonna be responsible to get those people moving around the town and in and out of town. And so I guess that's something that we could have discussed, and the phasing in might have helped. And I've talked longer than I probably should have, but I just wanted to bring that up a little bit for the history of it and the things I've looked at. Affordability, yes, we're looking at that. And your income, and I'm thinking at Water Valley, I evidently paid taxes when I built a home there. And I paid the road fee, and I guess I'm wondering, am I gonna pay a whole new fee, or am I gonna pay the difference between what I paid and what the new fee is?
So I guess that's what I guess I should have said that right off the bat, is the purpose of the road impact fee is to have new growth pay its proportionate share of the impacts that new growth generates.
Because what I'm also wondering, in Water Valley, we have a 35 to 39%, you know, the Metro District fee too, that's tacked on. So as a homeowner, I would be concerned about that, but I'm not concerned if it's going for roads so that I can move through this town halfway decent. Not today, but 10 years from now.
So the road impact fee is a one-time fee paid at building permit.
Okay.
And so it's charged to new growth. And if the road impact fee isn't kept current, as Pat mentioned, on an incremental year-to-year basis, then the community as a whole has to subsidize or backfill that road improvement.
I had that question asked, and that's why I'm asking it, because I want to be able to answer these questions of people that own these homes and they're going to be driving these streets.
Ryan, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, and somebody give me a little 101 on road impact fees. So we gather all these fees, and we put them in a bucket. What other revenue do we have to help fill that bucket on road impact fees? What's helping fill that bucket? So we're $40 million short, the way it looks. So where's the other revenue stream? I mean, so where does that money go? Does it resurface Main Street?
No, road
We have other
impact
fees
fees.
for that.
Road impact fees only go for expansion system.
Right.
And if it's gonna be anything used in conjunction with capital fund, which is sales taxes. That's the only, well, they could fund with general property fund taxes, but they don't, because our capital funds funded by our sales tax.
So you're also talking with some of that money could be used in conjunction with CDOT projects, county projects,
And
stuff like
grant,
that?
the grants.
And there's a credit in that formula for that ability to do that.
So is there a way to look at other revenue to fill that bucket besides road impact fees? To spread it around a little bit to fill that gap?
So for instance, we just received a $200,000 grant from the state of Colorado, DOLA grant for the design of Crossroads extension, in which Weld County and Great Western Industrial Park and the town are also gonna put in funds to match that, to get the pre-design completed from Highway 257 to the east side of the Great Western Industrial Park. And when that gets built, that will take that kind of effort, which will include road impact fees, capital fees, and partnership fees, and you hope grants. But that's never a certainty. You always try to, but there are different funds out there that you make an effort to use those.
Now, did the city of Greeley impose a sales tax to use for the roads?
They have a, what do they call it, a quality of life sales tax that they did about 8 years ago. It's for multi-purposes, including roads and recreation and such like that.
So I just wonder if that isn't a revenue option for the town to look at, instead of penalizing the first-time home buyer.
Ken?
I don't know.
I think the logic is, these new buyers, whether they're first time or fifth time, the roads need to be expanded for them, not for the existing people. They've paid their fee to expand the roads. So if this shortfall, you're right, has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from my neighbors. And when I tell them that, I hate to say it, they probably don't care about affordability as much as the traffic. So when,
What I found out about, most people don't care until it comes time to sell their house and they want the most money as possible.
absolutely.
Right.
Right.
So,
Sure.
Ken?
There's an old saying that says, if it is to be, it's up to me. And for Windsor, I think if it is to be, it's up to us. Does anybody in this room really think we're gonna be getting state money? We'll get a $200,000 grant, but that's a drop in the bucket. Does anybody in this room think we're gonna be getting federal money for highways? Very little, okay? So the challenges we have are ours, okay? And Kelly said, of course, we're gonna go for federal money and state money and grants, but we have to look at this as our challenge and our opportunity to try to get it right. And a little bit of chicken and egg here. I mean, we need homes and population to get more commercial, to get the sales tax. So our challenge is to try to work with everybody and get this right here. Because it's gonna be sales tax that goes into our capital improvement fund, okay? And I doubt the voters are gonna vote for an increase in sales tax right now. So we've gotta get more commercial, we've gotta get more business. And there's some things in the works that are kind of exciting for us. So, and I've talked to business people and they've said, well, until you get X thousand people, we're not interested in coming to Windsor. So home building is a piece of getting the sales tax that we need for the roads. So it's all puts together, we need to try to get it right, which takes me to my question for either Scott or our consultant. Could you just walk us through table 2 and table 4 and the phasing in? And I'm not advocating, I'm not arguing for or against phasing in, I just want to understand those figures. Table 2 is the potential 3-year phase-in schedule, and table 4 was the impact of phasing in. And again, I'm not advocating one way or the other yet, I want to understand.
So, yeah, I don't know, maybe you'd be the better one to just describe this, Elliot, or?
Well, table 2 is just really simple. It's current, for a single family detached, current fee is $21.64. The full ride is 3838, so over a 3-year period, it would be third, 2164, 2610 to 3187, like.
Yeah, it's just what I have on line
Not
two.
what you did, right?
Line two,
A
Ken.
little different model.
So this
Okay.
one is really simple, for all the different uses. And then,
And you were just doing single family,
I-
right? And, well, I understand that, but I mean, this was all of the different ones that we have to deal
Right,
with,
right.
and so.
and which was the other table?
I would see table 4 also, the impact of what happens if we face something in. And Christie kind of mentioned that.
Yeah, that's what the mayor was summarizing. Let me get my head around this one.
We lose about 2 million.
Yeah, so the revenue loss versus doing 100% right away is $1.3 million the first year, $700,000 second year, and then from the hence on, it's the same, so.
And this is based on, as you said earlier, fees that were just approved, not being raised.
Doing it over 3 years as opposed to immediately.
Okay, but then theoretically, we could raise fees in year 4, year 5.
Well, I think what we've all learned, the lesson to be learned is we don't wait 12 years to ever
Absolutely.
not raise fees again. And I think that is the one thing we could all be in agreement on. I think this is something that whatever we decide tonight, how we move forward, what we definitely, I think, will agree on is that this has to be something that, what we agree that we will look at and come to a conclusion every year, or whatever that number is, that we'll be looking at this sooner rather than later, so we don't come to this point in time. Again,
And Madam Mayor, I think along with that, what you're saying is not only look at not having this 12 years, but look at the growth, that's going to be happening.
because yes, and I think we want to keep coming back to see if these numbers are bearing out to be accurate with, is populations, is the numbers still bearing our projections, or are they going one way or the other? Because what if in a 5-year projection, everything goes the other way? What do you do then?
As far as number of permits?
Yeah, or just numbers, just numbers in general.
In theory, wouldn't we need less money because the impact to roads would not be as great?
Well, but we're not building roads necessarily just because, what we're looking at is we're looking at projections and we're calculating what roadways might need improvements on in terms of additional lanes, all of that. So it's not necessarily, we might not be building out some of those to the full potential.
You'd have less money, because less permits, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Less growth.
So you
right.
just, so we might do a moratorium or something where we would?
No, you'd keep on trying to follow a plan and do some things. And your 5-year review then would indicate that there's been a slowing.
Okay.
And then it probably would indicate there's probably a reduction necessary because of less permits. Does it still mean that there's still gonna be roads needed, but there might be less cars traveling on it because there's less houses being built? We're in a 5-year period that was estimated to be at X factor, and now it's been Y. So that's why I think 5-year look is a good idea, because it's a reasonable time to look at it and see where you are.
Well, especially when there's the CCI index built into it
Right.
between here and 5 years.
If you, let's just say we had in your case, let's just talk about a recession again, like an 08 scenario. 08 scenario, then you'd have probably a reduction if you follow the same logic that happened back then. You had 2 years of costs went down, so you implemented that. You had less houses being built, less permits, less money. So there'd be a slowdown in improvements. I still would recommend you still spend some on some improvements.
Yeah, traffic isn't gonna go down because the economy goes down. It's gonna be, you're just going to have less money.
Traffic would be slowed.
Right.
There'll be
Because
You
there's
have less
houses.
money, less improvements that you
Right.
can make.
And less houses.
Right.
Right.
Nobody can predict, nobody can talk about another recession. But the 4 guys here probably could answer the question about what's going to happen in in the next 5 years. Because I think they've looked at it very closely in building and go around, but I did it the other day, just drive around this town and see what's happening, and they can tell you what is happening.
I thought there was one thing that was kind of interesting in that study, and it's probably boilerplate, but if the funds collected are not spent in 10 years, they return to the original person that wrote the check, or the heirs of that person.
And that was the same, those were the reimbursements that we paid back to the developers that were.
Yeah, so I was gonna go on, so I think I'm a little bit mixed up about what qualifies and what reimbursements are used for. So can you just in a 101?
Sure. So right now we have a zero balance because we went back and reimbursed all of the outstanding improvements that qualified.
Well, let's talk about why we did it. Because so the fee's been around for 16 years.
Right.
The first 7 or 8 years, it was starting to accumulate some money, but not significant funds. And yet during that period of time, in 2001 to 2007, we were building significantly with development. And so the developer was putting in the infrastructure, and we were borrowing essentially town, saying, we will reimburse you. Once we accumulate the funds, we will reimburse you back. So there was a reimbursement, we had an accumulation of fund period also. And so we had to develop an interest rate, pay them back, and when we finally got what we call the pot big enough of accumulation of money, then we started writing the checks back to the developer for what we owed them for that 2001 to 2008 period of time, for all those extra elements they put in based upon our design that we wanted.
Okay.
Did they oversize?
Yeah, they oversized.
So as we move forward,
So yeah, the
may
goal
not
is,
necessarily
the
have
goal is,
reimbursements?
the goal of my life is never to have that happen.
Again, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So now more recently, we've been using money for New Liberty Road extension and putting it into the roundabout over on Chris Ruff's project and those types of things.
Yeah, so for the last 5 years, we've legitimately had enough money to pay as you go for the oversizing and start doing our own projects. And I think that's the balance you want. You want to be able to keep up with the developer, let them and help them do the oversizing as you go. And then if you have a balance, you do projects like New Liberty and anything else that has capacity. And that's kind of the ideal place you want to be to the fund, so.
Okay. So we are hoping we don't have a reimbursement fund in
That's
the
right.
future. I mean, that's not something or a practice we're hoping to keep in place.
So for example, we're building in the repayment of improvements to Harmony Road that the ridge at Harmony Road is putting in, that's already built into the
Okay.
The budget.
So he's doing extra work that we requested.
Right, so essentially the through lanes that serve regional traffic
Okay.
are the eligible improvements. We don't reimburse for things like turn lanes and acceleration lanes and deceleration lanes that specifically serve that property, so.
So we don't have the money, we've asked him to do this extra through lanes, et cetera, and we don't have the money to pay for it today. So we're gonna reimburse him.
We've built it into the budget to use road impact fee funds as we go, so that it won't be accruing a debt, I guess, so to speak.
Right, no, I get it.
Okay. So this is only one item we do have on the agenda this evening, but we do have all the players in the room. So I guess what I would ask now is, does anybody have any final questions while we have our consultant or we have developers here that we can ask questions to before I would look to ask the board, like, the board's already passed. We passed it in an ordinance, I believe, for the increase. If there is what would we do if there is some difference now as to how we wanted to move forward, Mr. McCarter? We keep the ordinance in place and just change the mechanism of how we're implementing it, or what is that process? If there's a change, if the board is swayed by a change of heart this evening.
We would go in and surgically identify that part of the code, the ordinance that you adopted in September, that contains the fees. and we would either delay implementation or phase implementation of that subsection of the code. Subsection 50B1, I think it is, or C1. And so we would do that by ordinance, take 2 readings. Your final regular meeting of the year is December 11th. So the decision would need to come sometime for first reading by the 27th, assuming no special meetings for that purpose. And then the second reading on the 11th of December.
Okay.
Can I just ask the stakeholders that are in the room? You know, all of the feedback that we've gotten since this all came up, nobody was really, in my opinion, complaining about the dollar amount of the fees. The consensus really was about the phase-in. I mean, Martin didn't really say, I mean, granted, we all wish they were lower and everything else, but the point is, nobody really had a complaint saying, we don't agree with even where you're getting this number, or et cetera, but yet, can we phase it in? So the real argument was just, can we phase it in versus how did we get to this, or what is it, or why does it need to be at this point, you know, et cetera. And I understand the 77%, all of that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just bringing up kind of the consensus, which is the phase in, the time frame to phase in, not necessarily the dollar amount that we get to during that period of time.
I would say there are 2 issues in my mind. There was the phase-in, it wasn't the amount, it was the phase-in, and the other is when it's collected.
Okay.
And when it's collected really does have a bearing on the carrying costs. So if you want to eliminate some of the impact on the affordability issue, if you switch it from collecting at permit to collecting it at CO, it changes what the carrying cost is for the developer or builder. And it's significant.
And how does that affect us?
It would be a big undertaking. One of the things that we never, Ian will back me, or will, not back me, but will
Attest?
attest. That's what I was looking for. To the fact that we never,
This can be dangerous.
we never want to tie a fee to or requirements to the CO, because that's when people are moving in, and that's when they've got the moving truck in the driveway. And every time we have conditions of CO, it's impacted the homeowner or the buyer more than anybody, and it's always been,
But we're already subject to, I mean, we can't get a CO without doing certain things already.
But the fee should be imposed on the entity that's creating the impact. And it's not the guy who's moving in. It's not John Q. It's the development community. And the only way to capture it from the development community efficiently is at the time of building permit.
and for us to change the system, it would be a big administrative task to separate some fees of building permit and some of CO. And it's essentially doubling the administrative work that the building permit tech would have to do.
Can I ask another, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go finish it. Okay, Paul and then Miles.
Well, no, and this, I think, went off of something that Christie had asked, but when I bought my home, it was already built, nobody had lived in it, brand new for 15 months before I came and saw it and said, this could be my home. The CO is issued before I close, or it was done 15 months prior when the home was finished and ready for technically somebody to move in? When in that process is the CO issued?
It could have been 15 months before you moved in, or it could have been closer to the time that you closed. It just depends on when the builder called for final inspections and picked up the CO. Sometimes they may let it drag on a little bit if they don't have somebody ready to move in, but normally as soon as they've got...
Which could delay a fee getting paid if it
Right.
was...
Right.
Okay. Miles, note that? Okay,
Well,
so I don't see any other questions brewing. What is the consensus of the board? Are you willing to reopen and want to relook at this in a phased manner? I guess that's the option I guess I'm seeing here, right?
Well, I personally feel that, yes, we should reopen and take another look, because we did look at phasing, and, listening to what we've heard up from developers and builders, I think we're not ready to go with that 77%. That's my feeling. So we ought to look at it, but we can't wait forever, because we need these roads, and we need to be planning them, and we need to be doing the developing of roads, not homes, because these people are gonna have to go on some kind of traffic pattern, and right now, it's getting horrid
Yeah.
in this town.
Okay, so Ivan's open to reopening this conversation. Anybody else?
So if you're not open, you're saying that you're just gonna leave it at this percentage and go with it at these costs?
I'm open to reopening it over a 3-year phasing.
Okay. Cindy?
I don't feel like there was really any new information on the phasing in. I mean, I think the people we heard from tonight were reiterating some of the same comments we heard the first time we looked at it. So I guess I don't really see anything to me that changes from the discussion we had previously. And my feeling from the discussion we had previously was that the needs are here already, and so the phase in is just continuing to put off our ability to address needs that are already here, so.
I hear
I
that,
guess I would
Cindy,
be
but-
inclined to leave it
Did
as
we-
it is.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, I feel like if we could go back in time, I mean, that third scenario in the sheet you gave us of a 5% increase every year since 2007, I mean, that would be the ideal thing if somebody's got a time machine handy, but, I think at this point it's, that scenario kind of shows that the development community kind of has gotten a gift for the last 9 years, and, now unfortunately it's time to pay the piper for the gift you've had for the last decade in development. So I guess I don't see it being useful to reopen it myself.
Ken?
I don't want to reopen it. I do want to, and I have to say, I've heard from a couple builders who said they're fine with it. They don't like the fees, but they can live with it. I am a little bit more concerned about and I don't have the technical language here, for a house that's already under contract, that the home builder doesn't have all of a sudden another charge. I don't know how to explain that, but, and you asked the question, is 3 months enough lead time? So that I'd be willing to listen to an argument on, but I don't see a need to reopen the phasing.
And I would concur with you, I'd be open to maybe looking at delaying it instead of January 1, maybe February 1 or March 1.
Or an appeals process, if someone, I don't know how to work out the technical detail
Yeah, I mean,
on that.
something as far
Someone
as
doesn't
that
catch them totally
specific
off guard.
effective date.
Yeah.
I'd be open to,
You've
but
already
not to
closed on
phasing.
the property, and you gotta all of a sudden come up with a lot more cash.
Well, the way it's established right now, it's what, new permits pulled after the first of the year?
I think January 1.
Yes.
January 1, yes.
Right.
Yep. But I think I saw you, Miles, you're opposed to.
Yeah, I'm with Cindy. I think this, Mr. Siegel brought it, I hate to say it, but this, I think, brought up a great point that had we done, I mean, we're getting to where we should have been all along. It's just unfortunate we're doing it in 1 year, and
Yeah.
I think Cindy brought up a good point. We're getting to where we were supposed to be, unfortunately, it's all at once. And that's no one complained when we didn't increase fees for 10 years.
Well, but I don't know that you can blame that on a developer, because I don't know that they look every year and say, oh gee, my fees aren't going up. Oh gee, my fees, I wonder what's going on with the town. Why aren't they increasing my fees? I think that is on us, as, that we're the ones that impose that, and so I think that's on us to regulate that. Again, I'm gonna go back to what I stated even before we passed this. I had concerns, number one, I kept expressing because we had heard from such a small group of folks that it seemed like there was not a concern amongst the developers in Windsor on this issue. And apparently, I think that we've seen, well, we don't have hundreds of them. I think there's been a dozen or so between letters, not they're all here in the room this evening, who have expressed a concern. My greatest concern, again, and I know that, it's been answered both ways, is the affordability issue. And like it or not, I do think that this does affect affordability. I think it is going to affect some of the development that's going to happen and incur. And even when you're in a phasing in, you can still get what we all want, and all we're looking at is a $2 million proposed gap, which we've even come to the conclusion that these numbers are all based not necessarily 100% on the right side. We could err, it could be more, but it could be less. And it's all based on population and a growth period happening this way for 23 years. And I can't guess that 23 years is going to evenly, from this date forward, move exactly the same pace that we're moving at right now. At some point in time, there's going to be some bumps and hits that are going to hit. So I'm the one that kind of voiced this concern several times during our previous work sessions and into the, up to the point where we did bring it into the ordinance. So I think we do need to look and do something. I would be in favor of the phasing in, but maybe there's another compromise, and I don't know.
And I guess
Because
that's-
at that point, it's 3-3, so then I don't know what we do with that, I guess, and it just ends up as nothing.
Well, I guess that's why I was saying, I would like to see some more study about the phasing in, see the exact figures, what we're dealing with in the phasing in, but I don't want to wait till June of 2018. I'd like to see it very.
Well, we have that slide that showed what it would look like, Ivan, and where our gap would be. I think the only other alternative that I've heard is if we delay the implementation of this from a January 1 to a June, and I'm not sure that,
Delay a full implementation.
well, yeah, or something, and even Ken offered, if I guess there's a developer who finds even troublesome, there's
Yeah.
But then that opens us up to, then you have our department, our planning department is gonna have to hear
Yeah.
one-on-one people coming to him and say, well, I can't do, and how do we, and then we're gonna have to hear all those so I'd rather have, I think what we need to do is a one-for-all kind of, what can come to the best
Okay with that,
conclusion
too.
is in the best interest of
Yeah.
everybody in the room. And I'm not sure just delaying it a little bit more from the concerns that I heard, answers to the developers what they need or would like to see.
Well, I guess what I find interesting though is the multifamily fee is a large increase, the retail commercial is a large increase, the oil and gas well fee is doubling. We don't see, Great Western Oil in here about it, we don't see extraction. I mean, it very much seems like this seems to be a concern that's isolated to the single-family dwelling.
I guarantee you,
Builders.
none of those people even are aware of this conversation
But
that's going on.
that's a good point, because I don't think there's any multifamily builders here.
Well,
You-
I'd like to speak to that.
Let me finish my point. And those would be the ones that are most targeted towards affordable housing.
Affordable housing, yeah.
And I know we can't change, but,
We did get one letter from
Okay.
Journey that's building the majority of our,
okay,
so that kind of covered both single-family and
Gotcha.
multifamily.
okay.
I mean,
The reason you don't see multifamily for the most part, quite frankly, is because of the construction defects litigation issue in the state of Colorado. And I know, having had to testify on that issue multiple times at the legislature and trying to work through that issue over the course of the year, with the Bellagio decision that came out from the Supreme Court in June, there's been some relief. But quite frankly, if I wanted to build multifamily and trying to be insured to build multifamily, that's a very difficult thing to do if I'm building multifamily for sale product versus multifamily for lease. Journey, for example, everything they build is multifamily for lease, not multifamily for sale. And so it's a problem in Denver, it's a problem across the state, because construction defects litigation in the state of Colorado it's the #1 state for construction defects litigation.
And it seems like we have more condos and townhomes since I've been on the board happening right now.
Yeah, we've seen a large increase in both for sale and for lease product.
Okay.
So that's the issue with multifamily. I mean, I'd love to.
No,
to
my
sell it
point
to
was
somebody, yeah.
that there aren't multifamily builders concerned about the change in permit.
We don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. Because these developers told us that they hadn't heard about those meetings, so have they either? And
I think a lot of these folks, I know Martin Lynn's, he's building multifamily, a lot of these are one and the same. So I would gather that their concerns are expressed for single family and multifamily. A lot of these folks are
I
doing.
Landmark, and that's how they feel.
Yeah.
And they're probably the #1 multifamily person up here for sale.
Maybe the only.
Maybe. They like the niche.
Okay, so
They
Brian
own it.
and then Greg.
Okay, I just got one small comment. How many times has a town raised fees on something, and the people that it impacts have come to you and agreed with you? Probably not very many.
I was surprised, that's why I brought up the comment, I was surprised that the actual dollar amount wasn't actually contested.
Right,
It
and
was
so
about the
we
phasing.
agree with your findings, we agree with your study, and you won't even go halfway with us. You won't even agree that, to implement, go a 2-year term. You know, do something, but compromise with us, you know? We don't disagree, we want to get along with the town, but, you know, like we said, every time we turn around, fees are going up. This has finally come to fruition that this is something we can talk about at least. But nobody seems to listen, so we're gonna leave this meeting and going, what's the difference? They don't care what we say anyhow. So at least, let's meet halfway, let's do something.
I was gonna.
Oh, wait,
just-
Greg and then.
I was just gonna echo, he said it for me. Part of the reason you probably don't see as many people here is because they think, what good does it do? You beat my head against the wall, so city's made up, the town of Windsor made up their mind, they're gonna do it, and we're gonna suffer.
And I would agree,
Remember,
I think the stakeholders are in this room, we have a personal relationship with, because they do a lot of
The
volume
last thing I'll say
in
is,
our community.
remember, one of the things I said earlier, it's not the developers got a free ride, it's the home buyers got a free ride.
Right.
Mhm.
Developers don't pay anything, they don't pass along to the price of the home. They're a builder.
David, would a 2-year implementation be
Yeah, I
okay?
think, I mean, like I said, my argument was A, affordability, and B, I'd like to see us be able to sell lots in Windsor. I mean, I told you about the meeting I had today. I think most of these guys would probably agree, if I can deliver a finished lot, meaning ready for vertical construction, I think these guys would say, if I could deliver something at 75,000, that would be a pretty good deal today, in today's marketplace. You know, so we have always done a pretty good job of keeping our price points so that we can attract the guy that wants to build, you know, the 300 to 325 type of product. And, you know, the national builder that I talked to today, I mean, he and I are sitting there, and this is pre him build, this is just having a finished lot. He doesn't see how he can get in our project for much under 87, and that's pre, building permit. You know, so, you know, all we're trying to do is work around and make it so that we can attract people that are gonna be able to build a product that I think you all wanna see in the marketplace.
What do I tell my neighbors then, that when I say we have a X amount shortfall, and due to new people moving to our community, now the existing people have to make up for that
I don't-
new expansion of roads, no.
And I'm not saying that you should do away with the fee.
No, I know, but
Okay.
we're saying we already have a shortfall, now we're gonna increase that shortfall by 2 million.
But it's all
But
projected,
yeah,
but it's only
that's all we
projected,
can work
Miles.
on.
It's only projected.
that's all we
It's
have.
not like we
Correct.
walk out of here tomorrow and we've lost that 2 million. This is over a 23-year span.
And if you don't collect it up front, it compounds over time.
But the
That's
high-
all we have to work on is our projections, just like you, when you develop and build, you have
No
projections.
question.
That money has to be made up somewhere, and that's gonna come from, you even suggested, maybe a sales tax. Why would my neighbors wanna pay a sales tax for the new people moving to town?
But Miles, you don't
Roads don't
think that
last
that
forever.
shortfall may be taken care of by all these new homes and all the new people coming in? If we get the new people, well, let me finish. If we get the new people, we're gonna get new industry, we're gonna get new stores, we're gonna get new industry bringing in money, and so that could be part of that shortfall too. And I don't know, because I'm not a.
But all these roads
Maybe our
also-
consultant over here could answer that question, but I just don't think we should be worrying about shortfall right now that much. And,
But that sales tax goes to maintaining the roads. That doesn't go to expansion of roads. So any new revenue that comes in is going towards going to
it
police.
doesn't have to be a sales tax. See,
Well,
I
that's
don't know that
exactly
we
what you
know
gave
that.
me. You
No,
said-
I didn't. You gave
No,
that.
you said new sales tax coming, new industry, new stores.
I didn't use the word sales.
Miles,
tax.
correct me if I'm wrong, though, wouldn't a sales tax affect your neighbors more than it?
That's what I'm
affect-
saying. We would have, if we don't do this, how are we gonna collect that gap, is my question.
Well, you know, Miles, one of the things that I think we fail to realize, if I do a project of 300, let's say, I'm bringing in 300 new, and we won't debate the number of traffic trips or anything else. Okay, and I expand that road, I've got 300 new users on that road, okay? But the greatest user of that road is the general population that already exists. Okay, so, but the financial burden of that road falls on the developer, the builder, and the new home buyer. Yet the greatest user of that road is gonna be the general public that already exists within the community.
David, I don't agree with that.
You know?
Well, and wait a minute here. You know, the gap that we're gonna have, whether we implement this January 1 or we phase it in, we will have a $44.2 million gap. No matter what we do. All we're talking about, in the sense of $44 million, is maybe seeing an additional 2 million of a gap in a phase. So in that case, we can't blame the phasing in or not phasing in over this because we still have a gap. So there still is a solution that has to be looked at and found. And
Absolutely.
it's not based on the fact that how we're implementing this. That's only $2 million, which when you're talking 44 million, what's another $2 million?
And that's
I
the
mean,
argument
I'm-
we're using when you're adding $1,700 to a $400,000 house. I think Cindy had the percentages there.
I guess that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, remember that gap is there because a lot of traffic is pass-through traffic, is other regional traffic. So it is not all the entire new development that's going to the road improvements.
And I don't
It's causing the need for road.
and no one's suggesting that new development should pay 100%.
Right, and that's what I'm
It's
saying,
a
that's what I'm speaking of the gap.
partnership with everybody.
So we don't say the gap should be all paid for by new development, because that's not the idea behind it in the first place.
Yeah.
So we do have another topic, and we've got guests, or, you know, a group waiting. I mean, I don't want to cut this off, it is important,
Yeah.
but I think we need to come to a conclusion if we're just going to leave it as it is today, or if there is some other thoughts or compromise that this board is willing to look
Did you have
at.
another thought about your,
I had a comment. I'm okay leaving it as it is.
So
But I want to make a comment about something Greg said. I think in communication is always so hard in any organization. You all know that in your business too. And now, yes, maybe the town could have put the email, big bold red letters, potential fee increase or whatever, you know, but I also got to say that you're in partnership with the municipalities that you work with. We have a business-client relationship, customer-consumer relationship. It seems to me that when I've been in business, if I get an email from a client or a customer or partner, I kind of read it. And so I was kind of surprised back at the early meeting that only 5 or 6 people showed up. So lesson learned for all of us is sometimes maybe we even put things in bold letters. But also guys say, if you get an email from the town, please read it, And Greg, I heard you say that we don't listen. And I know what you mean.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't take offense, but I just want to make it clear. I think we do. Really struggled with this a lot. And the fact that we've even the openness to listen to you, we are trying to think about what's best. And somebody said it earlier, it's not just our home builders or developers, it's 25,000 people that are driving our roads, 25,000 population. So we're thinking about the whole town in the long term. But I want to make it clear, I really struggled with this and really listened to all the pros and cons. And something we didn't talk about tonight is I think our fees, it's never apples and oranges because each community has different funding mechanisms, but we're pretty much in line with other communities that you're working with too, I think. So a lot went into my thoughts. I just wanted you to know that.
And I'd like
Appreciate
to,
it.
I'd like to just finish, I know you guys have to move on, but the one thing I would like to say is I find Windsor refreshing, frankly. The staff is always approachable. They don't always like seeing me come. Sometimes I'm sure there are conversations, right, Ian, that go around. And the board has always been very accessible. And I want you to know, as somebody who works in the community, I really, truly appreciate that. It's not, I can tell you, I don't get this kind of treatment in all the places I get to visit across the state. So I think that it is appreciated. So I just want you all to know that, so.
Okay. So I guess in conclusion, it looks like we're in a stalemate. Sorry, guys, it's a 3-3. So it appears that the ordinance will take effect as of January 1, as it was voted on. Can't remember when we did that, but
September 25th.
September 25th.
Thanks for your time, for allowing us to come in
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
for coming.
Thanks for your time.
I'm surprised when I didn't it?
And I too went through the town, a lot of articles, a lot of publications that you guys work on, and I don't envy any of you guys. That's a lot of work. So, thanks for your time also.
Thanks. Thank
Do you
you.
have to do a presentation or is it ready to? Are you guys doing a PowerPoint?
No, just some pictures.
I don't have, you guys look like the right country.
Nope.
Ours
Moving on.
ours is right.
We generally,
He's coming on.
we're used to moving on. So,
Are you coming
So-
up there, Herb?
I'm gonna come up here, yeah.
You don't want to, we are so entertaining. We're gonna talk about fire protection.
Oh, shit.
You're gonna see what a bargain we are. Yes, we are.
thank you.
Did you want to thank you for
Are you guys gonna need a few minutes to do that? So, I mean, I guess if there is time to take a little break if anybody has to. Putting their stuff together.
You guys should be busy between now and 12:31.
property, and Chief Brady is going to, I think, lead this discussion, so
So,
Chief.
yes, and we'll make this efficient. So you look at your outline, and then the one page in, you'll see a report, says UC Health on the top. And if you recall either being on the town council or involved in watching our transition of the ambulance service, we transitioned back in 2013, May 15th of 2013. We are coming up on 5 years, May of 2018. However, the contract expires actually at the end of 2018. And it's a good time to look back on how this has worked for us. And our ambulance service is pretty unusual, at least in this state, if not the region, in that we own the assets. We own many of the assets. We own the ambulances, we own some of the equipment on there, radios, and of course we own our fire stations. And we do that because we needed to attract a good quality provider that would be dedicated to our community and give our community a say in how the service is operated. And as you know, a lot of the rest of Weld County is served by Banner Healthcare, prior Weld County Ambulance Service. And especially the smaller towns aren't big enough to demand a level of dedicated service that, say, Greeley can. So this was a good way to do it, and it's, I feel, has worked very well. And so I think it's really eye-opening to people when they look at these numbers. First of all, response times. One of the primary quality measures we can do in EMS is that ambulance response time. And we don't do averages because that can get skewed. We do a fractile response. So we look for above 90%, and then we set time zones based on geography. Because, say, it's not reasonable for the ambulance to get up to County Road 82 and 257 within the same time we would take here in the city. And those expectations are different. So as you'll see, this is aggregate over from May of 2013 to September. They have met it within our fire district for the urban, which is basically anywhere in the town of Windsor or Severance. 96.2% of the time. And then Division 5, that is our partnership with Milliken and Johnstown, which is Front Range Fire Authority. And there, if you see there, you guys probably can't even tell the difference between the ambulances. They're red and white, they say fire rescue, they have both logos. I can tell, because I know the paint jobs. But they're identical, and that's just like Southwest Airlines. It's one of the hallmarks of a well-run organization is all of your equipment is absolutely the same. Every single, down to the smallest detail. So that's 95.7 for all 4 of these communities. And then in the suburban, or those little bit more out areas in the, say, east of Severance. That's an example of a suburban zone. 93.9% in our district, a little bit below 90 in all of Division 5, and that's because Milliken has some very difficult areas to serve. Just Millen Park is one that's just difficult to get into there within that time frame, but we're working on that. You will see that during this time, we've responded to 21,886 calls for service, and 11,346 people were transported to area hospitals. So that's kind of mind-boggling to people. I think they don't realize how busy we are. And then a hot button when we started this was destination. Because the healthcare providers, we have 2 competing, UC Health and Banner. You will, based on our proximity to MCR, that's where most of the patients go. And we per contract, they must honor patient destination requests unless there's a clinical override. So if you were having a serious heart attack, you would go to the closest hospital by time, appropriate hospital, of which that's NCMC or MCR. And because, say, the Harmony Banner Hospital or McKee are not equipped for those types of emergencies, so. And that's worked very well too, and that's something we've tracked every month, so. And that's it on the ambulance service. Are there any questions or concerns that you've heard?
Can I just ask a question in general?
Mm-hmm.
What's the protocol or the reasoning why every time an ambulance goes out, a fire truck goes out? Or in what cases does that have to follow?
It's fewer now.
Okay.
You may not notice it, but
Well, because
that's,
I live right down from the nursing home, and so, and you
Yes.
guys visit there quite frequently.
Yes.
And I almost always see a fire truck and an ambulance.
they don't always go. When I
Okay.
started here, they always went. Correct, Mike?
Yes.
Now we screened out alpha medicals, which are the lowest acuity, and that comes from telephone screening and dispatch at Wellcome Communications. They're an accredited center with emergency medical dispatching, so they ask a series of questions. And there are certain calls that we've cut out where we don't respond. We've worked on being more aggressive with that. And you'll see in our presentation on the new station, it's in our best interest. It's always been I've believed in only sending the right things to the right kind of call. And so that is something that has decreased. I don't have the numbers of how many times it's decreased. And then to answer your question, why does it go in the first place? That's on higher acuity calls that might be potentially life-threatening. Not that they all end up that way, because it's a layperson caller, excluding the nursing home.
So it's more about the personnel that are going there more than the equipment in that scenario?
Yes.
Okay.
And we've done things like we've added Power Load, which is a $21,000 device to help us lift the patients in, and in power gurneys, with our goal of being able to do some of these functions with fewer people. The ambulance has two, and so yes, it's a lot of, and a critical heart attack takes about 8 people to really run it the way we do. And we are also, if you're familiar with the lean, we're starting down that process to see if we just add a third person to the ambulance, if we can cut out more engine responses. And no one's doing that. In Europe, they will have 3 or 4 on an ambulance. In America, it's typically 2. But we're seeing if we can decrease engine responses and also decrease scene time and turn time at the hospital. Because if we can cut out, say, 7 minutes on scene and 7-minute turnaround at the hospital, that's 15 minutes back that we gain in those units. And it gets busy. We'll go over concurrent calls. There are times when, recently we had both of our ambulances in Milliken and Johnstown, and both of theirs were up here. That's because they go to the hospitals, and then as they become available, and they all get mixed up. And what's cool about that, though, is between us, we don't have a geopolitical boundary. We act as if we're one entity, and they flow freely back and forth. And that's a huge advantage that had never happened before. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that we do critical task analysis on all our different types of calls. And so those different types of calls are going to require a certain amount of personnel to get a certain amount of tasks done. And so what we'll do is we'll do those critical task analysis, say this is how many people we need to get this job done, and those are the resources we want to send, so that we can keep those available if we can.
And we are, today we're updating our strategic plan, and during the conversation you guys were having, I was answering a few emails, and one of them was to add to our plan for next year, looking at community integrated mobile health. And what that is there are certain segments of our population that call 911 quite frequently. And this model gets proactive where we send paramedics with special training and EMTs to their house ahead of time to make sure they're following up on their medications and various things. And this is cutting edge. It's not done in a lot of places, but where it has happened, they've significantly cut those repeat 911 calls down, and that's in our best interest. And the community, so.
I have a question about the ambulance. And I know Paul might remember this. We were at a meeting and there's, in Fort Collins, they have a RAM program.
Yes.
So is-
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that is? And is there
Yes.
anything like that here? They
We-
send out less people or?
Yes, we've bantered that around. We couldn't come up with it. If it was here, it'd be Wham, I think.
Wham, right.
That's something alternative medical. And they are using that, not every day, but certain days in Old Town.
Okay.
And that's because of the proliferation of bar calls that they were getting. So they could get in and keep engine 5 or tower, or engine 1 or tower 1, the big louder, from going out to these calls in that very specific area.
Yeah, it was a very proactive
Mhm.
thing. Like-
Greeley's gonna try something. All of the places that are trying it have these very highly active, low acuity urban cores,
Very
especially during
concentrated.
bar hours.
Okay.
And that's just how it is. It's a lot of, and we've looked at things, and we'll talk about on the station, things that we will do leading up to the trigger of a fourth station. But that's one. And what we were talking, when I was talking about mobile integrated health, that was, since we don't really have a party zone or anything here in Windsor like you would have in Old Town.
I don't know.
It might
You
come.
need to come hang out, you know.
It might
You should
come.
be at Mike's house on the weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
You guys aren't getting in fights and having to call us. But that's usually what they're after.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of larger cities do different things like that, and it makes sense there. We're talking about a similar thing, but looking at our segment of the population that needs some help with, sometimes we are their healthcare. And if we're proactive, maybe we can dial that down some.
Okay, thanks.
So that's it on the ambulances. Are there any other questions? We'll keep you updated. as
So
we
did you
move
say that it goes through 18 and then there'll be another renewal
Yes.
after 18?
Yeah, so we hope to, we want to get this off our plate, so we're working with UC Health now. And if we can renew it sooner, then we will. There's things that we both want. And they have big changes with the new hospital being built in West Greeley, which will be helpful to us because our time on task, we think, will be reduced by that closer destination, and it's helpful. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Now we'll get to the other reason we came, which is the main one. What we want to do is show you where we sit. Your big conversation a bit ago was all about growth. They all seem to be about growth lately. This is our story on growth and how perhaps we can work together on it. So we just brought our mission and vision and values. We're proud of it because we live that, and it's relatively new, and that actually came out of that big community-driven process that we had, and some of the people in this room went to this. We live it so much that it's a part of our handbook and how our people interact. And if you've been around Windsor a long time, you've seen this organization change from those all-volunteer roots and then up to 2000. You were one of the first big people, weren't you, Mike? However, we still hang on to that volunteer spirit. And I'll show you how financially efficient we are, in part because of that. So, let's see, the services we provide, you all know that. It's EMS fire, we do wildland fire, hazardous materials. We have a large emphasis on community outreach now. We have for both the EMS side as well as the traditional fire safety. And then with us, Sandy Friedrichsen here, she's taken it to a whole new level. It's very innovative and very much connected with the schools, especially the elementary schools, and how we do things.
Chief, can I ask a real quick question?
Yeah.
Do you, I'm assuming this is a yes, but I just figured I'd ask. With all the water we have around here, what about water recovery or whatever
Yes.
you call that?
Yes.
falling through the ice or
We-
drownings or, I mean, I don't know what.
We do ice rescue, and as soon as we get some ice, we'll be out there practicing again. And that's, we get a couple calls a year for that. And Swiftwater is a relatively new service for us. We've started it, what, 2 years ago?
Approximately.
Approximately 2 years with certified people. We converted one of our existing trailers to a Swiftwater trailer, and we have a new Zodiac boat that we bought. Right, Karen, that's her favorite. It's and our people trained extensively, and you'll see them out every spring training. And yes, during the massive floods we had around here, that's where we realized our capacity needed to increase, and because it's also a big hazard for firefighters. A lot of times, firefighter deaths, including in Metro Denver during the flood, they lost a firefighter based on the lack of preparedness. So, yes, we do that. I just forgot to put it down.
No, I just. I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know what-
It's not flooding season, so it wasn't on the top of my mind.
A few weeks ago, I looked out my window and right across the little pond, right by Rockbridge, there were about 6 or 7 trucks and vehicles and all these people out there working in the water. And so I asked, what are they doing? And they had a good answer, so they were working with water
Right.
safety.
Right, and we don't do dive, but that's because in this area, dive is not rescue, it's usually recovery, and it's extremely expensive. So we work together, all of the fire agencies, and we elected to be good at what makes sense for us, and then when we need, which unfortunately happens, we work with either Greeley or Larimer County.
Loveland, Fort Collins.
Loveland, Fort Collins, yeah. Okay, let's see. Oh, and we also do large animal rescue, and that was one of my favorite calls recently. Yeah, and we have veterinarians on call, we have special equipment, mostly donated, and so.
Neat.
Yeah. I wanted to show you, since all that conversation on finance is happening, it is, I think, on your packet, go in a couple pages, and it's just not in mine for some reason. Yes, that. So you see that the graph, it should be, these are supposed to be relatively in order. Yeah,
Third page.
yeah, third page. Just wanted to point out to you, you look at mill levies, the top, go down the list from Alt, Berthoud, et cetera, you'll see us at the bottom in bold, 7.194. That's our mill. We are the low price leader, except for Alt, which is all volunteer. However, this, by the election tomorrow, they're asking for a 3 mil increase for their services.
Alt?
So, Alt Pierce. Yeah, and then the other one, election is, Milliken is asking for a small, like a 3/4 of a mil increase, so that they can match Johnstown. If they match Johnstown, then they can officially fully merge. Right now, they're an authority, and there's a slight difference. And that's the strategy they're taking. So I think it's a good position to be in. We also don't charge impact fees. And special districts can charge impact fees. Starting last legislature, it was approved. Our board is very conservative and very financially savvy. And so that is something why we want, in this partnership with the town, would be very helpful to us, because of all this growth, we're not collecting anything to help pay for this infrastructure that we have to do. So we have to do it on our own and working with you guys, DOLA grants, et cetera. I wanted to show you our cost per unit hour, and that's the graph here. And that is the cost it takes us to staff an engine ready to go. So, but in 2009, we had one station, and if you just, easy math, you just take what we spent versus the number of hours produced, that's what's the cost. It was just under $500, and then you see how that was driven down. And then the number here, that little number says 1.25, 2, 3, that's the number of stations. And a big chunk of that was we reduced administrative overhead, we have today, we actually dipped way under during the recession. Today, we're back to the same number of people in the office that existed back in 2010. And we brought the volunteers in-house. You remember how they would come from home, you know, and you'd see the sirens coming from everywhere. You don't see that anymore on personal cars because the volunteers work alongside our career people in the station. They displace full-time pay and benefits that we would have to pay. And then we put more engines on the street. When we had that challenge of opening Station 3, we just simply couldn't have done it under this. There's no way. We would have been bankrupt. Because there was a mill levy increase, but it wasn't enough, and then the recession hit, and our revenue fell out. But we strategized and said, how can we do this? We have to do it. We have to open it. And we have to keep this quality. In fact, we have to increase it. And one of the things we did is we hired part-time firefighters. The other thing we did is brought all the volunteers in turn. And if you look at our fire crew today, you can't tell the difference. They dress the same. Their training is second to none. And it's unique. And today, most of our volunteers don't even live in the district. They come here because a lot of them want a career in the fire service, and we're known as the place to go in northern Colorado to build your resume and get experience and certification. So that's where that cost has really dropped. I think this is your part, Mike.
I think Sandy's going to talk about facilities.
Oh, yeah.
I think I know most of you, but I'm Sandy Friederson, the fire marshal. Spent a lot of time in this building, so I think I've seen most of you throughout it. But just briefly going to talk about what we have already. We have our Station 1, which is obviously the one right down here, built in 2002. It's our main station where all of us are out of. Station 2 is in Severance. It's our newest station. Was built in 2014. We had a little garage, if you call it that, before, that we actually had people living in as firefighters. And it was not ideal conditions, so we were able to build this great station in Severance. Station 3 is up on the hill on R8 Parkway. That was built in 2011. And then hopefully Station 4 that we'll chat about tonight will be built Crossroads and Highway 257 is where we're looking for. So this is just a drone image of the piece of property that we're hoping to build our station on. We have a minimum of 3 firefighters on each engine. Most days it's 4, but a minimum of 3. So it's 9 on shift at once, plus 1 battalion chief that runs out of Station 1. 3 frontline engines, plus we have a reserve in case one of them goes out to the shop or needs maintenance or anything. 2 tenders, carry a lot of water. 3 brush trucks, so 1 at every station. We have a heavy rescue and a ladder truck that are both out of our main station down here, plus numerous support and staff vehicles. Right now we're sitting at 28 career firefighters, 12 part-timers, 35 reserves, 13 EMS, and 8 support staff. So add all those together and we're probably at 100, if not a little under. So we definitely are very lucky with the stations that we have. I mean, this station is 15 years old, and if you guys ever want to tour, if you've never been in there, it doesn't look 15 years old. It's very taken care of, and we make sure that these are, I mean, they're our homes, so we want them to be as in good a condition, if not better than the homes we're in. So that's just a little quick synopsis of kind of what we are, where we're at. So
Station 1 still serves as our emergency office, right?
yeah,
Yes.
in the basement, the EOC is in the
Yes,
basement.
we share the emergency ops center with the town of Windsor, and it's in our basement. It's set up. We can pretty quickly create an emergency ops center for a disaster.
All 3 stations have community rooms of some sort. 2 and 3 have a room probably a little smaller than this as a conference room, and Station 1 has a huge training room, and those are open to public groups to either rent or nonprofit for no cost. If they need a place to meet, have a room. And we do get, I mean, probably every week, one station's got something going on from an outside agency using it. So we're very open to the public when it comes to coming in our stations, doing tours, that kind of thing.
Did you say Station 3 does?
Yes.
How many can you get in there?
not many, maybe 12.
Oh, okay.
Conference room.
It's just a
Yeah,
conference.
okay.
Yeah.
So Windsor PD has combinations to
Right.
Station 3, because it's remote up there, and we want them to have a place to get out of the snow, and if they needed to interview someone, but not come all the way down here, they're welcome to do that.
Use
I
the
don't know
restroom.
how often they come in, yeah, use the restroom, sleep in the recliner.
But I mean,
Kick their feet up.
Yeah.
the bays are also an option. Station 3, we have some empty bays. It'll be loud for a meeting, but it's definitely an option depending on, I mean, we had food donation place there, we've had Christmas activities going on, so it's definitely, in Station 2 as well, always do something with Severance during the holiday time, so there's definitely always something going on.
We do have quite a few HOA groups that use Station 1. And it's all paid for, by the way. We retired the debt that was on Station 1, was a lease purchase. We retired that last year, lately. So the only debt is the voter debt that was approved that expires in 2023, and it's less than $500,000. And that was to build Station 3.
That's a good feeling.
It is, to be debt-free is, and it gives us a lot more stability should we have a downturn or whatever.
I'll go over the,
You purchase equipment or do you lease purchase
We
equipment?
purchase it outright. We do have a new engine coming in June. It's built at SPI next door. A lot of their employees live here and owners. And that, after we stock it, it'll be around $604,000. Just to give you an idea, though, a lot of agencies will buy engines more expensive than ours. Ours is, we don't have any frills. It's very straightforward utility and identical. It's something we insist on. So you won't be able to tell, except it'll have a number on it.
Is something else getting retired because that one's coming in?
We have a 1999 engine that is our reserve. So it will stay until it finally gives up the ghost. So the current engine 1 will go into the backup role. With only having one reserve that's that old, it's a little, because anything can happen that would be catastrophic. Yeah. So that's what, we'll just move them on. In engine 1, instead of purchasing new, we refurbished it a few years ago. And so that saved us a lot of money, and it's still a very good engine. It'll be an excellent backup engine for a fraction of the cost.
it's very typical for every 2 engines that you have one reserve engine. That's just typical industry standard. Because if you get an engine out of service, then that's not good. I'll go over growth and call volume. I've got a little bit of information in this part of your packet. First one shows the call volume for 2010. And you see that we ran 1,474 calls for service. Then if you go to the second page, this year so far, we've run 2,989, so we'll hit over 3,000 calls. So we've consistently risen in calls about 10% every year. So we've had 100%, just about 100% increase in calls since 2010. So the calls don't slow down, they keep coming. I did do on the next page, I did a total call volume from 2010 to 2017. Now that doesn't, it's 9,252. Now that doesn't include the calls where we've actually assisted other agencies, like Loveland, Fort Collins, Eaton, all Johnstown. We have mutual aid, automatic aid agreements with all of these people, much like what you might have observed when we had the mill fire. We had Poudre Fire here, Loveland, Eaton.
Johnstown.
Yeah, Johnstown. I actually even had a birthday unit here. So on these larger incidents, or when we get those surges of calls, it's not uncommon for us to help each other. We have those agreements in place in the region.
What is a good intent call?
That may be just, that can cover a wide variety of things. A lot of times it's just because they don't know what to put down, but it's not somebody that needed any emergency help. Yeah, could be just a
Locked
service
out of their
call.
car, their kid was in their car and they're locked out.
Or lift assist maybe,
Kitten in the tree.
something like that too.
You know, we had, the last cat we did, the cat really scratched the firefighter up pretty good.
Oh, no.
But they had to get him down because his collar he was stuck on a branch.
Oh,
So
no.
they went out and cut the branch off, and then just to show his appreciation, he scratched the heck out of it.
All right, and then the next, we should have 3, but mine only has 2. I put the number of calls for station 1, 2, and 3. And for some reason I wrote that. Yeah, I put that was. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. From 2010 to 2017. Now, those aren't exactly accurate because in 2010, Engine 1 or Station 1 was also responding to calls up in Station 3's area. So that wasn't Station 3 zoned at that time. Okay, but nevertheless, you can see the number of calls that are in all areas of our district. It's a significant number. Let's see here. I think next thing that I'll go over with you. First of all, is there any questions on those figures for calls and types of calls, that sort of thing? Next section starts off with this page. You have CPSE, which is Center for Public Safety Excellence, ISO, NFPA, ISO is Insurance Services Office, NFPA, National Fire Protection Agency. These are the organizations that help us determine what standard operating procedures, sometimes policies and procedures that we will implement in our organization to keep up with industry standards and make sure that we're serving our community to the fullest extent possible. The Center for Public Safety Excellence, part of that is the Commission on Fire Accreditation International. For the last couple of years, we've been working towards accreditation. That's a big deal. I know that you're proud of the Windsor Police Department. They're accredited. They went through a lot of work. If any of you were involved in that, you know that's a lot of work. With the Fire Agency, this is an international organization. Right now, there's only 6 countries that participate in that. Just to give you an idea what kind of accomplishment this would be for us if we attain this accreditation that we've been working so hard for. There's 239 agencies that are accredited out of 6 countries. In the United States alone, there's over 27,000 fire agencies. So if we just counted those in the United States, that would be less than 1% of fire agencies are accredited. But we're talking about 6 countries. So if we make that elite class, that's a big deal. But that's not just for a sticker either. We've been working really hard on this, and the more we do, the more we realize how much hard work is ahead of us and will continue to be ahead of us for years to come. But it has definitely made our organization better. Any questions on that? The ISO, I think all of us are fairly familiar with ISO. Helps set some of the insurance rates. Some of the insurance companies use that. A lot of them do. We used to be a 4 in January 2016. We moved up to a 2. We'll say 2/3. It used to be 4/10, which means those homes that are over 5 miles away from a station and are further away than 1,000 foot from a hydrant are class 10. If you're within 1,000 foot of a hydrant and within 5 miles of a station, then you're a class 4. Well, that changed in 2016 so that if you were within 1,000 feet and within 5 miles of a station, you were a class 2. About 2% of fire agencies in the United States get a class 2. Class 1 is the best that you can get. Class 3 would be those areas that may be over 5 miles from a station, but still within 1,000 feet of a hydrant. So some of those that are further out of town, some of those housing developments, those would be class 3. So that was a significant improvement for us as well. And it gives a little information on there that the way that is graded is through needed fire flow. So how much fire flows do we need to handle particularly some of the commercial structures that we have, industrial structures that we have, and then of course how much water is available to do that. In some of your rural areas, we don't have a lot of water. That's where our mutual aid agreements, auto aid agreements come into play that we have with other organizations so that we can maintain at least 500 gallons per minute during the structure fire. We had a structure fire on County Road 19 shortly after putting this together, and we were able to maintain 1,000 gallons per minute of water flow. Just pretty good for a water tender operation. So that was something that we're pretty proud of. National Fire Protection Agency, NFPA, has been around for a while, since 1896. That's the standard that most fire organizations are going to follow to determine what kind of apparatus that they need, how to equip that apparatus, and how to staff that apparatus. So those are some of the standards as well that we follow closely.
Good. Yeah, that too was a pretty big deal for us, and Chief Blackwell was responsible for that, and he did a great job. So now we're up to looking at the analytics. Someone would ask, how do you determine if you need a new station, and when, and where? And so we'll show you some of the analytics, and I think hopefully it'll make a lot of sense to you. And this group deals with growth all the time, so. But I'm going to read it off, and then Chief Blackwell and Friedrichsen will go over these heat maps and such with you. But we look at population density, demographics, age, health conditions, etc., future growth projections, traffic patterns, and we've heard a lot about those, and then drive times that we use some pretty sophisticated software to look at now. And then we look at the trends, chronological and geographical, time of day, and then where they're occurring. And then we look at our distribution of resources, where things are physically located throughout our district. And as you know, we have our 3 stations today. Then we also look at high utilization, high risk locations. We have some definite, people know that Good Sam's is a high utilization, as is Windsor Healthcare, as is 1475 Main, that's top of mind. I know all the addresses, I could just write them down. And then for your reading later, it's the community risk assessment. It's also, I just took out stuff that's pertinent to this conversation that you could look at later. We don't want to be here all night, but I did take that out. And then our entire risk assessment, this is the whole thing, and it's available on our website. And that shows what, I think hopefully what you'll see is we just don't make stuff up. We're using a lot of data. And it's we try to strip out these opinions and just go with the actual facts and then projections. And we have some pretty talented people now on staff that can help us with that. So you want to go over the charts and show them where the trends are leading?
Chief Brady mentioned a community risk assessment and standards of cover. Standards of cover tells us how we're going to respond to calls and the data that we're going to utilize to measure our performance. One of those things that we do is we set our best baseline. What are we doing now? And then we set benchmarks. Where do we want to be? We picked a standard of meeting a response time of 8 minutes from the time somebody calls for help. So what that means is we figured into those benchmarks a 1.5 minute call processing time from the time the dispatcher picks up the phone to answer the call till the time that they tone us, 1.5 minutes. So we've got to work with dispatch quite a bit to make sure that they're meeting those standards. And we got a pretty good dispatch system. They do a very good job with that. From the time we get toned till the time that the wheels get rolling out the bay, is another minute and a half. That's our turnout time that we've established benchmark. Time they get out there, get their bunker gear on, get in the truck, know where they're going, and they're en route. That's 3 minutes. Then we look at a 5-minute drive time. So that's a total of 8 minutes, and that's a national standard for a lot of standards. So if you take a look at these maps, what we've done is we've established where those 5-minute drive times are for each one of our stations. This blue is Station 3's area. You see a little bit of overlap here with Station 1. And of course, the orange here is Station 1's area, and the green is Station 2 area. This is 5-minute drive times.
Oh, those little dots are hydrants.
Well, those little dots, those chiefs that are hydrants, that gives us a good idea of the population density in those areas as well. So if you look south here, those are outside the 5-minute response time.
Kind of right where you're standing.
Okay.
It's kind of at an angle.
All right. You see these areas here? Those are all outside that 5-minute response time that we're looking at. So based on the data, standards that we've established, where we're looking at a Station 4 position is the area that we're talking about. It seems the most logical choice. If we take a look at this one, this shows the areas that would be addressed if Station 4 was located here. The darker pink is the 5-minute response time or drive time area, not response time, but 5-minute drive time area. That'll help us meet that 8-minute response. The lighter shade would be the 7.5-minute drive time.
At what speed?
This is Google speed.
Okay.
So we typically,
I've always said you could drive this community, so.
you know what we do is we typically, what we'll typically do is we'll use normal drive time.
Yeah.
Okay, although we can go emergent, red light, sirens, a little bit of increase in speed, there's a safety factor. So we don't go all out driving. We want to make sure that we're doing this safe. And quite frankly, even when we're going emergent, we don't beat regular drive time by much. But what it does is it lets people know we're coming, so that we're making it safe. Route,
On drive time, do roundabouts slow you or help you?
They slow us, yeah, they do. That's why you gotta pay, I guess, huh? To make
So-
everybody else safer.
It looks like this is currently in the,
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of overlap.
so, okay.
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of overlap.
Yeah, because this is only Station 4. And then sometimes you might ask, this is, not Highland, what's that subdivision?
Steeplechase.
Steeplechase. That's a little bit outside, however, Station 3 is right there. And it's a little, because of the way the road's wide, but it's better served because it's bracketed by 2 stations, whereas like this side doesn't have anything until you get to Milliken, right? We work with our partners all the time. I just spoke with Loveland's Chief Miller this afternoon just to get an update. They're getting some property donated in Centerra at Crossroads and Sky Pond in that area. And so he said if it all goes to plan there, they would open up a station in 2023. And we don't take offense to people crossing lines. In fact, we were in Loveland today for them for a pretty good length of time. And our Station 3, our Engine 3 went over to their Station 6, which is by the Target.
I'm assuming the pink outline, a red outline, and then the white is actually the fire district territory.
Yes, this is all our district.
So who covers this? There's kind of these 2 blocks laying by themselves.
Could be Greeley. Oh, this right here? Is that what
So
you're talking about? That's our area.
That's us, but what's,
These are areas that Greeley may have annexed.
okay.
Yeah, typically. So what they don't want, we get to keep.
So if you guys annex a lot, then we keep really out.
You'll notice that the area around Martin, near Martin Salvage, Greeley annexed that too, but they didn't annex Martin Salvage, so we still have that. So it's interesting how that works sometimes.
Is that the little dot down there?
Yeah,
Right there?
Yeah,
yeah.
nice.
This next one is kind of a heat map. Heat map we did, it's kind of hard to read, but this one helps, has a little bit better visual. Again, we see the areas that are currently within that 5-minute drive time here with Station 1, Station 2, and Station 3. What are highlighted here are all the calls that, calls for service that took place outside of these areas. I think these are the 5-minute drive time areas. You see there's a significant number, mostly down here. You see that there's two numbers, and I know you probably can't see because they're kind of small, but there's two numbers here. For instance, this one's 5.5. The first 5 is the number of calls that we ran in that area in 2010. The second one is what we run so far this year. You get down closer to this area, let's take a look at this one here, for instance. 9 calls in 2010. This is the South Water Valley area. 51 calls so far this year. Then we have the area where Good Samaritan is, 2 calls in 2010, 154 calls so far this year.
So anything red is the biggest disparity. But these reds, like up here, aren't as concerning because there's a wide gap, 0 and 7, 0, 6, 0, 5. However, those are very low numbers, as opposed to these, which are massive.
As opposed to the Good Sam that needs a substation at the.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But the winds are high, the Severance High School's gonna be one of those red zones pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
So that'll maybe
Yeah,
have some
and-
impact.
And see, in this report that the company that we're looking at, they ran this today. The reason you don't even see anything here is because it's excluding those areas. It's only looking at these areas outside.
Outside the
But
5-minute
it
drive.
shows where
The new high school's within
that
5
growth
Yeah,
is.
it's a new
The
high
southern
school.
station.
Does the new station in Timnath help any of those northwestern, or are they still too far?
Yeah, no, I mean, they don't, they're Autoway partners with us, so it will help.
Our auto aid agreements are typically for fires,
Okay.
structure fires. It doesn't mean that if we're extremely busy, that we can't call them and ask them to assist us with this sort of thing as a mutual aid.
Right.
But typically, it's going to be for structure fires.
You can't count on them like you.
Right.
Right.
They might be on their own calls.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the
Throwing
problem.
there.
That's the concept with mutual aid and auto aid is you have to be a good neighbor and give back as much as you get and keep up with your own growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions on the drive time, the number of calls in that region that we're talking about?
You have a couple that actually, though, have decreased. Why would there be decreases?
We
Like the
wondered,
44 to 2 and the 18 to
Yeah.
0?
Someone moved out.
It's where they passed.
Yeah.
The
Could be a
44-2 is one I have to look into, because that is pretty significant. However, if we look at
Like 39 to
39.3, that's a Carestream Kodak area.
Oh.
And there for a while, we were getting quite a bit of false alarms for water flow alarms.
Some of them went
That's
from 7-day operation down to 5-day operation.
So you're gonna see a drop in.
and their stuck elevator, people stuck in their elevator a lot. But they must have fixed the elevator.
Or they're not using it.
Or they're not using it, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have no idea on that other one.
Now, what's the like blue boundary?
This in here,
Inside.
That's the station boundary, so the blue line is the
Okay.
cutoff for station 2.
Yeah, that's right here.
Yep.
Oh,
so this
okay.
is Station 3's area.
Gotcha.
Station 1's area, Station 2.
And so what, and the other factor is there's a domino effect. You see this, this scenario here, we're crossing that river south to go to, say, Good Sam's or wherever. That's out of Station 1, and then a call comes in here, which is our busiest station. Now, either Severance or Station 3 comes down and everything starts. And that's why if you're a citizen, any additional fire station and capacity added to the mix doesn't matter. If you live in Severance, this station is going to help you. And that station in Severance helps people in Windsor quite often and back and forth.
Just to give you an example of that, this year alone, 37% of our calls were calls where there were multiple calls occurring at the same time. 37%. So what that means is if Station 1 or Engine 1 and Engine 3 is out, then the risk has just increased to those communities because now we don't have available resources for them. Station 2 will help cover that. Engine 2 will help cover that. And of course, if we had an Engine 4, that also would help cover that. That's also where mutual aid and auto aid agreements come into play too.
Remind us how you, just real briefly, how you responded to anything on the south side during the 13 flood. Where'd you at the station?
We found a pathway for Station 3 was the only one that could get there.
Okay.
And we did some temporary reassignments, and then especially for Good Sam's because they were cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And
The 33 was your most accessible.
right. But prior to
station
Station 3, this one would have had to drive all the way up there, and then we found the route through opening up what's now New Liberty and getting down that way. Yeah, and we, and everybody, those rivers just cut these paths. And then as far as taking somebody to the hospital, there was one choice, PVH, for a while. And even some places further south of us in Weld County, the only place they could get to is Longmont. That's the stuff you deal with.
So our land is south of the river, so that would have been helpful if you'd had a station there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
For that situation.
Yeah, that definitely would have helped. What else do we have? Okay, so Sandy's gonna talk about that property and why we're so excited about
So
it.
the more meat and potatoes of what we're here for tonight is this property. Hopefully you guys can see it. This was provided by engineering to me. This is the property that we're looking at. It's kind of this south east corner of the intersection of Crossroads and 257. Just the south part of it. Originally the sewer went across from here, but we got it updated from engineering, and it's on the far south. It's a 27-inch line, so obviously it's a huge line. We're not going to be able to move it or do anything with it. We can put a parking lot on it, we just can't put a building on it. So what's really great about this piece of property is that it's on two major highways. We like to stay out of subdivisions and school zones as much as possible, unless obviously we have to go to them for the call. So that kind of keeps us out of any subdivision area, any school zone area, at least in the immediate area. Obviously, like I said, if we need to go into the subdivision over here in Water Valley, we go into it. Ready access to Crossroads and anything that's west. I mean, Crossroads, there's a lot of things that are west on Crossroads. So that gets us access to that. North of 257, we can be in Severance in no time, essentially, as long as there's not a train crossing the road. It's a direct path up to Severance. It's a direct path to Greeley if we need to help them out by going south. It's also one of the first pieces of property you'll see when you come into town from the south side on 257. And as you see, all of our stations are great looking pieces of property. We keep them up, and we expect to do that 110% on this piece of property as well. We are as proud of our property and as our buildings as we want the citizens to be. We try to help them blend in a little bit in the neighborhood. There's not really, all these are in subdivisions essentially. There's not a subdivision here, so we want to make it still look good for anybody that's coming into town, coming to visit, see us. We want to be good neighbors to everybody. Let's see. Ready access, I talked about. Nothing's set in stone yet as what we want the station to look like. It's going to be probably a larger station than our Station 3, just because to have the extra bay space would be good. But it's definitely up in the air. Nothing's set in stone, like I said. We'll get a task force together to figure out what our needs are for here. Do we need to have the heavy rescue down here instead of Station 1? Do we need an ambulance? Do we need to move our foam trailer out here because it's by the industrial park? is there things that we need to do to make this station work for this area? We are also talking about having a self-sufficient training room, whether it's a room that's a separate building or a room within our building as well, like we have at Station 1, but the bathrooms, a mini kitchen, everything that's there for the public to be able to use and be self-sufficient, that there's no reason, unless you want to come into the fire station, everything you need is possibly there. Because like we talked about, we open up our stations to anybody that needs them. One thing I did forget is in your packet is a map I pulled off the city's website on residential development. And if you look at all the development on the south side, the very south of that is actually Crossroads. There's approximately 3,610 lots just right there that are developable. Some of those lots are Pelican Bluffs, which have 8 to 6 plexes. They have the apartment buildings that are 200 plus. So it might be one lot, but it's got a lot of people on that lot. And that's, all those that I just spoke about are right at the roundabout. So there's a lot of density that's gonna be right at that roundabout. But that whole section where Rain Dance and, I can't even think of all the names of them, but everything that's going down south there in Crossroads, that's all gonna be direct access to this fire station. Unlike now, where Station 1 or 3 is gonna have to kind of get their way through town to get to that area. So that was another reason why this is a really good intersection to have our building at, just because of accessibility.
Can I be the devil's advocate?
Of course.
When we first heard about this location, my only concern was living on the south side down there with Rain Dance going in further west than what, it's in this major growth area here, which to me is not very fast to get there from Station 3. Because of, there's not a direct path. And if it was Ivan's choice, there would be a direct, I just had to throw that in there. But all that being said, I'm looking at your map. It seems like that says there should be one where you're proposing to put it. But a lot of that is the industrial area, which I don't know what the service volume is for an industrial area versus, in my mind, and I'm just, like I said, having thought about this since we originally were told about this location, was around somewhere like 13 in Crossroads.
Which we did, that was actually our first go-to, was property in Rain Dance area. Chief talked with the schools about trying to work out some kind of partnership with them on a piece of land. They didn't have enough space for us to be able to move on to their piece of land.
How many acres or what's the land size you need?
The minimum for a fire station is 2.5 acres. So that's from our architect who builds stations all the time.
So we did talk about that, and we looked at some other land options in the same area. Nothing that was available to us was A, affordable, and B, made sense. They were odd shapes. They were in a subdivision, which we didn't want to be. We wanted to be more on a main road. Coming out on a crossroads is dangerous for everybody. There'd have to be a separate light, which I'm not sure, I don't remember if Rain Dance or anybody's putting in a light, but there had to be something to help us be able to get onto Crossroads. And with the industrial park, right now, there's 15 users in the industrial park, and that's slated to grow south of Eastman and east of 257. That whole piece of property is gonna go gangbusters, and the industrial park at some point is gonna pick up again as well. So being at this intersection, we felt that yes, it was a little more to the east, but you're covering the industrial, which our amount of calls is low there, but if something happens, it's usually a big incident that's there. But being at this intersection, it gives us the ability to go in many different directions on major streets without going through a subdivision. So we felt that this piece of property, if we can make it work, would be a better answer than being in the subdivision by Rain Dance.
And you'll see in our community risk assessment, and then if you wanted to dig into that, those industrial areas, those are target hazards. We actually name them. And there's a lot of very bad chemicals there. A lot of potential for trouble. You've got an ethanol plant, and these are the types of situations that communities with significant industrial parks often co-locate a fire station right in there to get on a situation to protect the public and to mitigate it. And the other part of the standards to cover is, like this town hall is a target for us. Because if the town hall burns down, it's a central part of the community and a lot of stuff is lost. If Vestas has a major loss, that's a lot of jobs. So we look at the employment and economic situation as well. So that's what, and yeah, I mean, I must have driven these routes thousands of times looking at different options and talking with people. So we felt that, especially leading into the future, that's the strategic location, plus with the fact that our neighbors to the west in Loveland they have a need to cover that Centerra area. They're completely on the other side of the freeway right now. And we factor our neighbors in as opposed to the old days when we just did it all.
Kelly, in our Crossroads expansion, are we anticipating it's gonna go straight east from there, or is it gonna curve around?
I think,
Do we know that's
The
part
one
of
I
our
saw,
study?
it was going straight and then coming down like this and then meeting back up.
And so you've already seen that, and that still plays out, okay?
As far as I know, it hasn't changed from what we saw in plan.
One of the things we realized,
their design was improved out there.
it's really timely you're getting that study for that extension, and we thought that if anything, we would have to extend it and then stub it off. Because coming out here, CDOT's not gonna do that, and we don't wanna do that. So we would just turn this into a short little intersection until the time that thing's extended.
Well, you must have had some discussion about the brands too, what's gonna happen over there.
Which one
The
was
whole-
that?
Well,
By the summit,
Crossroads.
Oh, gotcha.
north of Res.
The hotel.
That's a big part of
Three
this.
hotels and
That's
all
a big-
the stuff that's going in there. and the
That's a big
brands.
part of it, and that's why it's nice at least to have 3 and 4. Just because you have a station there doesn't mean that they're not out on another call.
What are the parameters of your jurisdiction all the way? Is it out to I-25? Is it, what?
Yeah.
It is,
this-
except on Fairgrounds, we're on the east side of Fairgrounds, north of
East,
Crossroads.
So this
and
will
Loveland's
show,
on the
we
west
have
side.
a pretty good chunk I-25 right there, and then a little bit across. And then on the south, we come south of Iron Mountain. And a lot of times you get a wreck at this terrible intersection here, we'll get both Greeley and us, and sometimes Milliken and Johnstown. And unfortunately, a lot of times they need us all. I'm also happy that they're looking at that, CDOT's looking at that highway. We have a few intersections when we get a call, we know it's probably bad.
What's the general acreage of that site?
So that's a question, because it all depends on how we subdivide it. And I haven't gotten an answer from anybody, because nobody really knows. I
Right.
think Rose said it was about 6, is that what you had said? They estimated it was 6 acres.
Yeah,
for
but
this
I don't
part.
know, yeah.
But we're not 100% sure, we just kind of just.
Squared off.
Yeah, yeah. And it
Is
all.
that a
dep-
ditch to, is that a ditch to
This is
these?
a creek right here.
Creek?
Mhm.
We
It's
did,
actually, it's the Eaton Ditch.
it's just outside of the flood zone,
Yeah, the floodplain comes right about here.
and we even had, you guys know they're gonna mine back over here, right? I think. We already asked if we could have the overburden to build it up. So,
And that's even with the new flood map that's coming out, the projected one. We had engineering run that, and we should be okay where we're at in the station. I think maybe a very small corner would be in it, but it would probably be parking lot, or landscaping or something.
So that's really the only potentially usable parcel out of almost all that, except for,
This north part possibly could it just would depend on the use, but
Yeah.
all of this was not, didn't
right,
seem
like
very
a
usable.
farming mine and such, right?
yeah.
It'd be great for a wetlands park or something after they're done doing whatever with it.
Right.
So where we're at is, everything we're studying looks like it's a great location. But now we're at the point where we want to spend some money and go through your process. And you guys know it better than I do, Sandy does.
What's the timeline? If you could say today, when do you need a station? When would you?
That's a tough
I know.
question
That's what I thought.
to answer. It seems to be around that 2020 to 2023.
There's kind of a rough future steps on the back of your thing.
And even if people wanted it sooner, we're not sure how we would pull that off.
Yeah.
Our board, we are accumulating cash, both for our apparatus replacement. We want to keep up our world-class services, but we think that if we get enough help with grants and partnerships with the town and what we're able to set aside and nothing bad happens with oil and gas revenue and all, we hope to be able to do this without even having to ask the voters for anything. But, there's a lot that can change. That's why when you attract industrial and commercial clients, that really helps us. Rooftops do not. They call for services, and with the Gallagher and stuff, if you just fill in and keep all houses, we're not gonna be at 7.194 and be able to do this forever.
So you're not looking for a mill increase?
No, our board hasn't even talked about it. They're our president and vice president. And, but we haven't gotten that far. And here, the other part was if we get the property and we determine that it will work, that will give us time then to work into this problem. Whether we would have to have a bond or if we would, probably one of the first phone calls we'd make is to DOLA and see how we could get some assistance there.
What does the station cost, or what did 3 cost?
3 costs, I don't remember 3's cost. This cost $3 million.
And this is probably too small, so we would be going.
Was your land donated by Severance?
Yeah, this was donated by Stan Agger.
The
Two
developer?
was?
Developer.
2 was.
2 and 7.
Yeah, we actually have some excess property that we're just waiting for the dust to settle to see who we could work with. Severance may get a police department or something, that'd be a great location. And this, when I talked, Doan was our contractor, when I asked him, it would be about double now. We hit this, no one was working, there was no construction going on, and interest rates were ultra low. So we refinanced our lease purchase on Station 1, freed up $2.3 million, and then added $850,000 of our own, and built this thing.
For $3 million?
Yeah.
Then you have to buy equipment.
What's that?
Then you have to buy
And
the
they
equipment.
Well, we had the.
I was just gonna say.
We had equipment at the old station, as an engine and stuff, but we did turn around and we bought a new fire engine. And back then, that fire engine was about $500,000, so, and then we turned around and paid it off, just last year. And that was a lease purchase that had been with the district since, well, Station 1 was started back in 2001, I think, is when that first money arrived, so we paid all that off.
So Herb, you and I had talked about next steps. This first thing is say enter into a letter of agreement. So that, one of the conversations that we've had a little bit is, does that mean that the town will do this or not? But you're essentially saying, let us go try and do feasibility on this.
Yes.
While the board, you're not looking for an affirmation of the board that tonight or anytime soon that we intend to do this or would want to do this with the district, or when do you see that kind of commitment happening?
The commitment? Well, we're ready to start moving to the next phases in
Right.
time. We set a goal of having a final answer by the end of next year.
Mhm.
It says first quarter 2019, but essentially give us a year.
If the board entered into this, what do you say, a letter of agreement here, does that mean in your mind that the board is agreeing to give you the parcel if it works out, or do something with the parcel?
If it works out, and then let's say we come back within this year, say, yep, this is why we think it's gonna work, then it would be reasonable, then if the board was gonna donate that to us, then to give us a time frame of which we would have to build a station. We can't just hang on.
And that is what your crux of your other request is, it would be
Yeah.
potentially
We would-
discounted or donation.
Yes. We pay you half of what you pay.
That's what I was just gonna bring up. That's what I was just gonna bring up. This was donated to us by Bro.
We should pay
wasn't it?
twice what we paid.
Yeah, and when I went out,
We did pay.
right, I went out and
We didn't
I,
pay Bro anything, but we did pay.
Yeah.
I
So
met
we
with
can add that
Bro.
up for you, Herb.
I met with Bro and they said, we already gave you this, what are you here for? And they always think we're part of the town. I said, he goes, well, I talked to Kelly Arnold. We're different.
Hey, what did Kelly Arnold say?
Yeah, they had just.
What did he say?
It was like within a few weeks of them doing this with you guys, and I said, oh, I was a little late.
Is there a chance we enter into this and the feasibility says, it doesn't work, and then it's off the table?
Off the table, yeah.
So you
I mean,
can't,
there's a lot, we have to figure out water, if we need to bring it and go underneath, or if we can use this water tap. If we can, I think we've already told you can go off the sewer, gas, all the utilities, to make sure that the angles of the station meet, and that we meet CDOS requirements. There's a lot of stuff for us to look into before we can say that this is 100% our property that would work for us.
Are you clear enough of the floodplain?
Yes, we already know that.
We did, that was one of our first concerns. And we didn't want to, we did all this internally, and now, just turn around and go, oh, we already sold it to Jack in the Box or something, that would. So a commitment, and then if it worked, then we would work out how we would, our time frame of when we would get this done or give it back.
would you need all 6.5 acres? Is
We don't know what exactly is there, but that's kind of what our idea is, just to make sense of us having full access right to the crossroads and coming out.
So you take that whole section?
This part down here.
Yeah.
Kind of first blush was having the station towards the north part and having that training facility to the public on the south part with the parking lot. That's kind of first blush, very, very first.
You're not gonna go and piece it off and sell part of it?
Well, could our initial agreement just be to go to work on a feasibility study then, or?
Yeah, you guys do this a lot more than we do this.
That's how we, I think typically have entered in with a lot
Yeah,
of
but I
folks.
think, I don't disagree, but I think they probably don't want to spend a whole lot of money on something.
Unless they have some kind of
If this-
assurances.
Unless the board says,
Right.
this could be its full idea.
We're working our way backwards with the least expensive, most obvious questions.
So letter agreement would stipulate that they would probably be able to access our property, our information we have, and then they would have to make their determination.
Yeah.
How they get there, whether it's feasibility study, or whatever they do.
But would this agreement say, if it all shakes out, yes, they get it? I assume that's what they're.
That's what I would hope.
That's it.
And then, are you saying that if it gets to that point, there would be a window within which groundbreaking would have to occur?
Right, yes, that would be reasonable.
We don't want to stay blank forever.
Forever, okay.
It's like that Severance Stand donated, that's almost 6 acres, no questions asked. We felt it was the right thing to do since Town Hall moved into the bank just north of us. And we're talking with their town council, said, well, we don't know where this is going, but if this was a community block here of public safety in the town hall, this would make sense. I even brought up the library, but I'm not going to. But it would make sense, so we just sit on it. We actually started a community garden on it. The nonprofit, they came and they take care of it, and we put in some water for them. And, yeah.
Well, this is a work session. I don't know if we want to give any direction tonight, if we want to have.
Well, we could work towards something and put it in front of you if you are ready to let us spend some time on it.
We don't want to spend any money on this if it's not available to us.
Right.
It's like you don't go to the grocery store and get a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, you can have that.
Sure. Does the board want to, I guess, that would fall on you, Ian, Mr. McCarter, to
You want
start
us to spend money on it?
drafting
Yep, and
And
he
looking
works
at-
with our attorney all the time, so.
something? What-
Yeah.
that
I'm
we
in
could look at?
favor of it if this is where they feel the next location needs to go and they have a need for it years down the line.
When you think of South Hill and Rain Dance and all this stuff, like I said earlier,
Steeplechase.
brands and steeplechase, and I'm certainly in favor of it too, so.
Okay, Are there any additional questions?
I had two questions, which are not related to the location. There's, the information is really interesting. The number of fires surprises me. Is there a pattern of causes or something that might be an education prevention program or something?
I'd have to take a look at this. The
Just
number-
curious, just curious.
The number, if you take a look at those fires, that looks like a lot.
Yeah, it looks like a lot.
The majority of those are ground cover fires.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we do what we can to educate those that are involved in ag burns. A lot of those, we got to control ag burns and that sort of thing. But that's where the majority of those fires are.
The other question I had, you heard our conversation earlier about roadway improvement. And Scott's not here, but our process, when we start prioritizing our roadway improvement plan, are you involved with that, or do we have a way of getting input from the fire department? Do we need input from the fire department on?
Like, do you mean like widths of road, or do you mean actually like spending the money on?
Where? Yeah.
I mean, I'm involved in all subdivision stuff
Okay.
that happens within the town. We don't collect any fees for that. But I'm in here every Thursday and talking to all developers about all the roads and everything that they're putting in and make sure there's access and.
And just like we were
all
talking
widths and
earlier, some
everything.
areas are difficult to get to because we don't have a really good road pattern here. So I
Yep.
just wonder how we involve,
Yeah.
Yep.
how we think ahead.
Yep.
to
No, I'm in
plan for that.
on all of those conversations, or I should say most of them. I'm sure there's some that I'm not involved in, but.
And we get
for the most
stuck
part.
in the very same traffic that you guys.
Yeah.
It's trains, and
Mhm.
we even have procedures for when we see a train, we'll dispatch the, whoever's on the other side and start talking about how to get around it. And there's technology improvements that, it's another conversation, but working with the town of Windsor on an Opticom system. CDOT has it on a few, like that, actually the new light at Crossroads has the equipment on it. And I talked to them, and that's our ability to change lights. There's a little strobe. It's, I think, a felony if you put one on your car.
Well, I was gonna ask you, what's the cost to buy that?
But it's pretty handy, especially if you. if
Does
we
everybody in Cali have
equip
one of
Main Street, because then all the lights will just change for you. It will help, it's a,
Most big cities have them. Any,
Right.
any city, any side.
yeah, we have them on our ambulances so they can get into Fort Collins, Greeley, and Loveland. They'll trigger theirs. Yeah.
Herb, I don't want a long discussion about this, but are you thinking about the Rocky Mountain Sports Park?
Yes.
And working with Severance, and, because that probably will be a lot of accidents and
Yes.
call for ambulance more than
And
fire, but we
one-
don't know.
I'm having a little difficulty getting through, but one of the things we really need to do is talk about having on-site EMS to prevent calls. The biggest thing with special events, and why you'll see our mule at, like Boardwalk Park, is we can stop a lot of calls from ever happening. And that park would definitely need that, if it's as big as they say it will be. Otherwise, we'll be going there all the time. But it's an easy solution if we can work with them.
Okay.
Are all these maps available online, like to be able to zoom in and?
I think they will be, they're not at the moment, because these are brand new.
They're
In
literally,
fact,
they're fresh off the press
Oh,
today.
We have
I guess I was thinking
today.
just the general fire district map.
that
It's located in here, which
Yeah.
is on our website.
Okay.
So I know for sure that that is on there.
Okay.
And those maps may be in here as well.
I believe those are in here somewhere.
Okay.
We're gonna ask our board for some money to buy this program. We're actually one of the lead
Yeah, so
agencies in the
It's
country
actually
that has
divided by
this.
like your station 3, station 2.
Right,
Station
and there's
one.
copies of that.
There's some, yeah.
And then that packet's a very, very, very abbreviated version, obviously, of what's in here, so. And look, there's even a picture of us doing some ice rescue, so there's proof. But that's,
I like to go out on ice.
that's actually one of my favorite trainings, is ice rescue training.
If you-
So you're
We,
buying for a
yeah.
town for that one?
Okay.
Snowmobile.
Any other
We'll
questions?
call you, we'll send you.
You have
out there.
direction? So I guess we'll be seeing something in the near future for consideration, and
Yeah,
then
thank you.
we'll get back with you
Thank you.
concerning that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For hanging around too.
While they're cleaning up, our final item is future meetings.
Yep, so we'll keep open for the next 9 hours, and then we can open up The egg and I have tomorrow's breakfast, if you want to stick around for 9 hours. Egg and I at 7:30, is that right?
7. I thought it was 7.
7:30 on our agenda.
Oh, is it only 7? Is it 7?
Says 7:30.
Our
Okay,
agenda
good.
is.
You get an extra half.
I'm not gonna be there.
I have heard that there's a couple commissioners that might not be there too.
For whatever reason.
I don't
What
know.
is?
It may not, a couple may not.
Not a lot of guys.
Are they buying, by the way? Otherwise,
They generally do.
Okay, good.
Whoever is coming is buying.
They invited us.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I think the ones that aren't coming didn't want to have to buy.
We just tell the laypersons that one week in Hampshire.
Next week is your informal work session here, and then we have also Corn Board meeting. Are we gonna have one? Do we have one?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's one action item for the Kern,
All
but
right.
it won't be.
It will be.
It's on our work session for next week.
Nothing. It's our informal. Then the 20th, we have the crosswalk, finally, good discussion, and Comcast is set to come. Talk about what they're up to. Then we have a special meeting that night. That's about all I have.
Is there, we can talk about anything like broadband with Comcast,
Yep.
what they're,
Yep.
they have plans to.
Yep.
The whole discussion might change after tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll know how the.
How Fort Collins goes. That's what he was just saying. How much? How much?
400,000 against it.
So that concludes our work session, I think. Thanks.
Thank you.